One of the most profound movements and one of the first real social movement in American history was all about slavery, and that's labor. And it was about creating a different kind of democracy, different kind of way of thinking about the economy. And I think these battles aren't over. The African American portion of American wealth as a whole is 3% today. And the last time it was 3% was in 1868, 3 years after slavery. African Americans going back to before the Civil War, and the earliest African American spokespersons and writers and leaders like Frederick Douglass and others argued that the fundamental feature of the American economy was dehumanization. And they also argued that you can't have a democratic constitution and an economic system that degrades and exploits people. Many of the radical Republicans who fought for the Civil War and in the Civil War believed the same thing. I think the true intent of the 13th Amendment wasn't just to eliminate chattel slavery. It was to eliminate all forms of economic oppression and create what we would now call living wages for everybody. I think that was the true intent. But these things were overthrown. After the Civil War, there was a counter-revolution, Lincoln's assassination, the destruction of Reconstruction. We got segregation, which wasn't just about making white people feel superior, it was about a cheap labor force, which persisted. The 1963 March on Washington, where everyone sees Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Well, King wasn't head of that march. A. Philip Randolph was, the first black trade union president. The demand of the march was for jobs and freedom. Jobs came even before freedom. That sort of dream of a new kind of economy was tightly connected with thinking about voting rights and a new kind of politics. And when African Americans said we refuse to work as basically semi-slave laborers with no rights and no voting rights and no protections, and my generation said we're not going to do that work that our parents did, then employers started bringing undocumented immigrants into the country to work with no rights and no protections. And when the government said, well, what are we going to do with all these young folks like me who don't want to do this kind of semi-slave work? They didn't reform the economy. They said, let's lock them up. And we got mass incarceration. And so I think all of these things are related to our history. All of these things are part of the challenge of changing the system. And the system connects these things.
This is why you took a second job. While you taught yourself how to fix the plumbing. While you'll do whatever it takes to keep your home. And that is why we want to help. We are making home affordable, a free government resource that can make paying the mortgage easier. Call 888-995-HOPE today.
Oh man, the political revolution has begun. How about it? Hello, everybody. The morning after New Hampshire on this Wednesday, February 10. So good to see you today. And what a blowout up in New Hampshire. Bigger margin for Donald Trump and for Bernie Sanders than any of us expected. Yep, on the Democratic side, Bernie with 20 points over Hillary Clinton, just crushed her. So much for this talk that the Clinton people were going to get the margin down below 10 and then just blame it all on Bernie being the man next door. That's why he won. Didn't work that way. Bernie won across the board among women, among independents, among young, among old, almost carried almost every city in New Hampshire. It was a huge victory, as he would say, for Bernie and for his message. And now we move on to Nevada and to South Carolina. It's a whole new ball game, and it's going to be a long one with extra innings. On the Republican side, of course, Donald Trump, he did it. He came in first. He outperformed the polls, actually, unlike in Iowa. John Kasich, with a strong, substantive, positive campaign coming in second. And then the also-rans Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and Marco Rubio. Looks like Chris Christie is going to be out after. But just to show you the size of Bernie's win, Bernie Sanders alone got more votes than Donald Trump and John Kasich combined. So he's got a message that's going to resonate across this country. And today, Bernie Sanders meets with Reverend Al Sharpton to start talking about appealing to that African-American vote down in South Carolina and other southern states. Lots to talk about, so give us a call. Whether you're watching on Free Speech TV or on our video stream, youtube.com/TawkrTV, give us a call at 866-55-PRESS. Let's talk New Hampshire.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine, Virginia Tech,
Tucson,
Aurora,
Fort Hood, Oak Creek,
Newtown.
Newtown,
Newtown.
Newtown.
How many more?
How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
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 Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
who they might have been. No more,
If we had just done something yesterday.
It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
The political revolution has begun. Yeah, hello, everybody. What do you know? What do you say? Here it is. Oh, my. New Hampshire. A blowout for Bernie Sanders and a blowout for Donald Trump. That political revolution has hit both the Democratic and the Republican parties. And it was fun to watch last night and fun to be part of. This is Wednesday, February 10, the morning after, or still the morning, it seems. I've been talking about this since early this morning. But with after leaving CNN, 2 hours sleep, right here with you to continue the conversation. And good to see you today on your local progressive talk radio station. Great to see you on Free Speech TV and on TawkrTV as well. Thanks so much for joining us. We're here in Washington, D.C., with our eye on Manchester and the rest of the state of New Hampshire. First primary in the nation yesterday. And we got the team assembled today with sort of like hit or miss, I guess, right? But everybody's here. Peter Ogburn and Jamie Benson. Hello, Jamie.
Good morning.
Peter's busy giving somebody hell. I'm not sure.
We're still counting over here.
Oh, it's still counting.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
still
Well,
counting
there
the
are
polls.
Couple of precincts out. Is that what it is?
A couple precincts out. You know, you never. I'm interested to see how 6 and 7 and 8 are going to fall there for the Republicans.
For the yeah, right. I think we know.
It's not done for Carly yet.
I think we know how it's going to work out for Carly, and I think we know how it's going to work out for Ben Carson. He's going to have to go home and get more than a set of clothes this time. We also have Ray Rogers, who is standing by to take your calls. All right, we've been talking for a year just about leading up to this moment. We had lots to talk about in Iowa, but even more to talk about in New Hampshire because it's a primary. It's different than a caucus. It works differently, and there are lots of little aspects of this to talk about. We'll get into that. So Ray Rogers, anyhow, to take your calls at 8. That's the point. At 866-55-PRESS, give us a call. 866-55-77-377. And Cyprian Bolding on the job as well as our videographer. It was everything can happen in New Hampshire. Even animals can show. I mean, like independents can show up. Well. But I'm sorry, they don't call them independents in New Hampshire. We all kept getting messed up on that on CNN last night. They're undeclareds. You have to call them undeclareds. Well, undeclareds can show up and get a Democratic ballot or a Republican ballot or whatever. Even pigs can show up. That happened in some little town up in New Hampshire, as was duly reported by the media.
And this noon, has the election gone to the pigs? Well, it certainly looked that way in Pelham when this huge pig got loose from a nearby farm and was outside a polling place there for about 45 minutes. Eventually, the farmer came to claim the pig and got things back to normal. Apparently, he was protesting pork barrel spending.
We could have done without that joke, but at any rate, I think you could get a little messed up when the pig shows up, right?
Did you see how big that thing was?
No.
It was huge.
Really?
I think it was over 200 pounds. I don't know who he's going to vote for. Christie.
Oh, poor Christie. Leave Christie alone.
I know.
All right. Yes, good. At any rate, we've got a great lineup of guests today. David Jackson from USA Today will join us. He's on the ground up in New Hampshire, has been there ever since Iowa. We've also got Congressman Dan Kildee coming in to give us the latest on Flint, Michigan. And then we've got a whole set of reporters and the chair of the Democratic Party of New Hampshire joining us from Radio Row up in Manchester, New Hampshire as well. But now let's take a look at the numbers last night. You've heard them, I'm sure, just to refresh. And these are the, again, I left the set at 4 hours ago at CNN. These are the latest numbers. They may have changed a little bit. These are the latest numbers. If they have, Jamie, that you know, let me know. The latest numbers that I left CNN with, on the Democratic side, again, a huge blowout. The polls showed at one point that Bernie had a 30-point lead, maybe then a 28-point lead. The Clinton campaign said privately their goal was to get Bernie below 10 points, at which point they could just blame it all on the fact that he came from the neighboring state of Vermont. Bernie exceeded expectations. He ended up with a 21-point lead. The last number, again, when I left CNN 4 hours ago, 60-39. And he won across the board. If you look at the map of New Hampshire, which John King was showing us last night, it was all Bernie land. City of Manchester, which Hillary had to carry, she carried in 2008. That's how she beat Barack Obama in New Hampshire, lost it to Bernie Sanders last night across the board. And the thing about the Sanders victory, it was so vast. He picked up, by the way, there are 24 delegates in New Hampshire. He picked up 15 out of 24, Hillary getting 9. And Bernie Sanders in good form when he accepted victory. Bernie Sanders saying, first of all, we've proven we've got a message, and it is going all across this country.
Together, we have sent the message that will echo from Wall Street to Washington, from Maine to California.
I thought he was going to jump into "This land is your land" there. It sounded like it's starting. And Bernie also said, we won despite the fact that they attacked me on every front, threw the kitchen sink at me.
They're throwing everything at me except the kitchen sink, and I have the feeling that kitchen sink is coming pretty soon as well.
Kitchen sink on its way for her part, and she did it very fast. By the way, the call, there was no hesitation here about these calls. The polls closed at 8 o'clock, some of them at 7, and the rest of them at 8 o'clock Eastern. And at 8 o'clock Eastern, all the cable networks called Bernie Sanders the victor on the Democratic side and Donald Trump winning the Republican side. It was just an immediate call. There was no doubt about it. And it wasn't long after that Hillary Clinton, right away, she put out the word she was going to concede. She did, with Chelsea and Bill standing by her side and congratulating the senator from Vermont.
I want to begin by congratulating Senator Sanders on his victory tonight. And I want to thank each and every one of you. And I want to say, I still love New Hampshire, and I always will.
There it is, 60, just looking at the very, very final with 100% in, is 60-38. So I ended up actually 22 points. What was impressive about the Bernie win, as the people will be studying this and talked about it for a long, long time to come, is how widespread it was, the breadth and the depth of Bernie Sanders' win over Hillary Clinton in Vermont. And again, this idea that just because he was, Bernie in New Hampshire, just because he was from Vermont, that meant that he had an advantage is really spin, total spin on the part of the Clinton operation. Yes, in some parts of New Hampshire, he was known because he was from Vermont. But the southern part of New Hampshire is much more like Massachusetts. And remember, Hillary Clinton won New Hampshire in 2008, counting her husband's races and her races. She has actually campaigned statewide in New Hampshire 4 times. So she's not a stranger up there. She had a lot of advantages. Plus, remember, she's former First Lady, former Senator from New York, former Secretary of State. Her name recognition she had vastly more name recognition than Bernie Sanders did in Vermont. So when you look at his victory, it's even more astounding how the breadth, again, and the depth of it. For example, and these are the exit polls that we were given at CNN last night when we were on the air. Let's take gender. Among men, Bernie Sanders outpolled Hillary 66-32. He also won women. Bernie Sanders 55, Hillary Clinton 44. Here's an interesting one too. How about age? Okay, how do they do among the ages? Get this. For voters 18 to 29, Bernie Sanders got 83% of that age group. 83% of young people voting. For 30 to 44, right? 66% of people in that group. You get up to 45 to 64, he got 53% to Hillary's 45. The only age group that Hillary won were people over 65 years old. Otherwise, Bernie won them all from an age point of view. And the other one that really struck me was in income. I did want to show you, there was one group that, I'll find them here, that Hillary did win.
So many statistics to look through.
Well, I know, but also hard to find a category that she won. I said she won over 60. Here's the other one, over 65. On
income as well, right?
On income, that's the one I was looking for. On income, okay. Let's take the different categories. Less than 30%, $30,000 a year. You make less than $30,000 a year. Bernie Sanders, 71%. Over Hillary, 25. You make 30 to 50 grand. Bernie, 60. Hillary, 38. You make up to 100 grand. Bernie, 64. Hillary, 35.
Wow.
You make up to 200. Bernie, 55. Hillary, 44. If you make over $200,000 a year, you vote for Hillary. That's the one group there. So she got people over 65 and making over $200,000 a year. Otherwise, Bernie Sanders cleaned up across the board among every other category. It was a very, very impressive win. 866-55 is the toll-free number. And the question, of course, we'll kick around throughout the morning is, now Bernie moves on to states that are going to be challenging, maybe even more, certainly more challenging from an ethnic and a racial point of view, and that is South Carolina and Nevada and the other southern states. But he also moves on to Illinois, to Ohio, to Minnesota, to Michigan, states where jobs are going to be the key issue, states where TPP, states where the Keystone Pipeline, states where NAFTA are going to be big issues. And so we'll talk about how do you think Bernie could fare in that. But let's just look at last night's huge victory in New Hampshire for Bernie Sanders. Can he take that message all across the country? Let's talk about it. 866-55-PRESS.
Get social with Bill Press. Like us at Facebook.com/Bill Press Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
Today, in this country, we are having a conversation about police violence, the killing of black men, and what all that means. It is sad that this is happening and that every day there's a new incident to cause us to keep thinking about it and talking about it. But it is extraordinary that the American people are having to deal with this every day, whether you're watching CNN or MSNBC, Fox, or ABC News. All the news channels are talking about police violence and what does that mean against black people. Many people probably look at that, certainly have looked at it in the past, and they have said that these poor black men are doing bad things, and that's why they are ending up in confrontations with police, without any understanding of their lives of these poor black young men. Part of what has been going on for decades is that poor black people live in communities that suffer from hyper surveillance of the police. The police are more likely to be in their communities. The police are more likely to arrest them. The police are more likely to stop them even if they're not doing anything. And that is what is so hard for the American people to believe, that you would get stopped and searched and arrested by the police and not doing anything. But this is starting to come out as people are telling the stories over and over again. But this has been the condition, this hyper surveillance by police, making it more likely for people to get a record, to be known by the police, and then once they get in the system, it is almost impossible to get out because of the whole system of being on parole and missing an appointment or fraternizing with a person who has a criminal record, getting you right back in the jail, and then going back again and again and again. This is coming to be seen by the American people in a way that it has never been seen before. But why are people in these communities in the first place? That's getting peeled away. People are there because of housing discrimination. They are there because this is the only place where affordable housing can be found. They are there because that's where their families live, and people are drawn to being in communities where they are comfortable. The combination keeps people in these low-income communities where they are an easy target for hyper-surveillance and then everything that comes from it. And so as we think about these issues, we have to understand that while you as an individual in this society, as a white individual, you may not carry personal racism, but that does not keep the system from operating in a racist way.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, 24 minutes after the hour, yes, indeed, assessing the impact of Bernie's big win in New Hampshire yesterday. I got to tell you, all night long, I was pinching myself on CNN. There we were for hours and hours and hours and hours, talking about the fact, who would have thunk a year ago that Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump had won the New Hampshire primary.
Crazy, right?
Overwhelmingly. To give you a taste of the size of an impact of Bernie's win. Bernie Sanders himself alone had more votes than Donald Trump and John Kasich combined.
Damn.
Huh?
That's crazy.
Pretty impressive. Peter?
We are on Twitter at BP Show, at BP Show. Make sure you chime in there. NC Nomad asks, Bill, did you happen to see that Hillary tried to co-opt Bernie's message in her concession speech?
She sort of took a couple of cues from the Sanders campaign. Also, Phil says New Hampshire was nice, but it's like scoring a run in the top of the first inning. Let's not get too carried away. There's still 48 more states to go.
Indeed, and that's a good reminder. Bernie Sanders would be the first one to admit that, and so would Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
But, yeah. It's actually, but the first primary, but the second state, 48 more to go. But still, again, when the Clintons were putting out that Bernie was just popular there because he was the kid next door, and that they were going to get him down below 10 points, one might say that she would have been better off going right to South Carolina or Nevada, not spending all of her time in New Hampshire. But they wanted to prove that New Hampshire was their comeback state. She wanted to be the comeback kid of this year, and it didn't work. Jim is calling from, here's where the Democrats go next. Everybody's talking about South Carolina, but there's a little stop in between.
That's not lest we forget.
Of Nevada. And here's Jim. What do you say, Jim?
Hey, Bill, remember me? I was on the focus group from the very first
I remember, yes.
CNN.
Right.
Okay, yep. I'm also a sponsor of people from other countries on couch surfing, and this kid is from Israel. He's here today. I just met him today. He thinks we're the laughing stock of the world. He flew here 30 hours from Tel Aviv through Paris and L.A., and they all know Donald Trump and they know Hillary Clinton, and they think Americans are so crazy because of Donald Trump. And when he got here to my house, we had a drink together. Every single channel had Donald Trump on it. They didn't have Hillary. They didn't.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's an embarrassment. I got to tell you, watching that Trump speech last night, I thought, oh, my God, what do people think of us, right, watching that speech or with that guy winning?
Yeah.
All right, Jim, what I want to know is who's going to win the Democratic caucus in Nevada?
I am running one of the caucuses. I'm caucusing for Bernie. This is the microcosm of the country right here because we have we have black people, we have Spanish people, we have gay people. It's going to be very, very close. We love Hillary. Hillary's wonderful, but I think Bernie's going to win.
All right. You got it. Hey, Jim, good to hear from you. 866-55-PRESS. More calls welcome. I just wanted to point out one other thing, and that is, again, on the exit polls, here's a little hint, a clue, a window into the Bernie win. On the exit polls, 77% of Democrats said they had made up their mind long before they walked into the booth, right?
Wow.
With Republicans, only 53% that said they had made up their mind earlier.
No kidding.
46% of Republicans made up their mind like yesterday. Yeah. So Democrats, that helped Bernie. They'd had a good impression of Bernie. He was up there early, and they signed up with him, and they did not waver. Yes, indeed. So there it is. We'll talk the Republican side and the big battle for who's going to be able to get third place in the Republican Party and what happens next.
This
after the break here,
is
your
the
calls
Bill
again.
Press
Welcome.
Show.
Across from me at the kitchen table, my mother smiles over red wine that she drinks out of a measuring glass. She says she doesn't deprive herself, but I've learned to find nuance in every movement of her fork, in every crinkle in her brow as she offers me the uneaten pieces on her plate. I've realized she only eats dinner when I suggest it. I wonder what she does when I'm not there to do so. Maybe this is why my house feels bigger each time I return. It's proportional. As she shrinks, the space around her seems increasingly vast. She wanes while my father waxes. His stomach has grown round with wine, late nights, oysters, poetry, a new girlfriend who was overweight as a teenager, but my dad reports now she's crazy about fruit. It was the same with his parents. As my grandmother became frail and angular, her husband swelled to red, round cheeks, rotund stomach, and I wonder if my lineage is one of women shrinking, making space for the entrance of men into their lives, not knowing how to fill it back up once they leave. I have been taught accommodation. My brother never thinks before he speaks. I have been taught to filter. How can anyone have a relationship to food, he asks, laughing, as I eat the black bean soup I chose for its lack of carbs. I want to say we come from difference, Jonas. You have been taught to grow out. I have been taught to grow in. You learn from our father how to emit, how to produce, to roll each thought off your tongue with confidence. You used to lose your voice every other week from shouting so much. I learned to absorb. I took lessons from our mother in creating space around myself. I learned to read the knots in her forehead while the guys went out for oysters. And I never meant to replicate her, but spend enough time sitting across from someone and you pick up their habits. That's why women in my family have been shrinking for decades. We all learned it from each other, the way each generation taught the next how to knit, weaving silence in between the threads, which I can still feel as I walk through this ever-growing house. Skin itching, picking up all the habits my mother has unwittingly dropped, like bits of crumpled paper from her pocket on her countless trips, from bedroom to kitchen to bedroom again. Nights I hear her creep down to eat plain yogurt in the dark, a fugitive stealing calories to which she does not feel entitled. Deciding how many bites is too many, how much space she deserves to occupy. Watching the struggle, I either mimic or hate her, and I don't want to do either anymore, but the burden of this house has followed me across the country. I asked 5 questions in genetics class today, and all of them started with the word sorry. I don't know the capstone requirements. I don't know the capstone requirements for the sociology major because I spent the whole meeting deciding whether or not I could have another piece of pizza. A circular obsession I never wanted, but inheritance is accidental. Still staring at me with wine-soaked lips from across the kitchen table.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
To get in the way before it happens.
To get a friend home safe.
And to not blame the victim.
It's on us.
To look out for each other.
To
not look the other way.
It's on us to stand up.
To step in.
To take responsibility.
It's on us, all of us,
to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Hey, it's 34 minutes after the hour. This is the Bill Press Show on the morning after Wednesday, February 10. Our good friend David Jackson from USA Today up in New Hampshire. He's been following the Republican candidates around. We'll get his take in the next segment right now. Again, looking at the incredibly strong showing of Bernie Sanders. And when he started out, everybody said, except us, right? Everybody said, oh, he's just a grouch. He's a gadfly. He's this eccentric socialist from Vermont, not to be taken seriously. Everybody underestimated him, except Bernie supporters feeling the burn, and particularly a state like New Hampshire, independent-minded state, where half of the voters are undeclared voters. And I think it showed that this message that he and Donald Trump both tapped into is a frustration, disappointment, even an anger at the establishment and at politics as usual, and people saying, these guys have screwed it up for so long, we want a total new, fresh approach. And in this case, the fresh approach is offered by a 74-year-old senator from Vermont.
I mean, we keep saying this. Bernie and Donald Trump are carrying the same message, just on completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
And different issues.
And totally different issues, right?
Yeah.
But this idea that people are fed up with politics and want a breath of fresh air, it's certainly working. It certainly won big last night on both sides.
Right. And it goes on from here. Mike is calling from out in Kansas City. Hey, Mike, what do you say?
Hey, good morning, Bill. I want to make a point that one of the things the political pundits miss is that Bernie ideas are unattainable. But if he has this revolution and he has the turnout, you're going to have the down ballot seats. You could get the legislatures you need, state, local, and national, to accomplish those goals.
No, that's an excellent point. He made that point in his it wasn't his concession speech, because we were talking about it earlier. No, maybe it wasn't his concession speech, and that is, he's always said, I can get people out to vote, right? And that's what we need. Well, he did last night, right, Mike?
That will happen. I mean, they are attainable. You just get people out to vote. It'll be a revolution. It's one area where trickle down will work.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mike. You know what? I love the way Bernie responded to that last week. It was either the debate or the town hall where he said, where Hillary said, we can never have single payer, right? We can never have universal health care because we're America. And Bernie says, what do you mean? I mean, I'm paraphrasing. But he said, which is true, Sweden's done it. Finland's done it. Norway's done it. France has done it. Germany has done it. Italy, Canada has done it. And the United States can't do it? It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's insane for people to say we can't do it. I mean, yes, the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies are strong, right? But if the people demand it and elect people who will vote for what the people want and not the big pharma or the big insurance companies, we can do it. The political pressure. Here is North Carolina coming up soon, too. Joe calling from Marshall, North Carolina. Hi, Joe.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. What do you think last night?
Oh, I thought it was great. And I used to live in Vermont, and we all love Bernie there.
Yeah.
And I moved to North Carolina about 4 years ago, and I'm outside of Asheville in Marshall with two L's. And I'm finding that people here that I talk to really don't know Bernie that well. So I'm really hoping he will come to Asheville, where it's pretty progressive, and other places down here to familiarize people with him.
I think you will see. I'd be willing to bet that you'll see Bernie Sanders in Asheville. By the way,
Asheville is Bernie Sanders country.
It is Bernie Sanders territory. But Joe, you made a very interesting point, and that is, I think again, those people who write Bernie off, and I kept dealing with them last night on CNN, all of them. Yeah, the question, how can Bernie go on to South Carolina? How can he go into Nevada? Isn't it like over in Vermont? No, it's not over in Vermont. The more people get to know Bernie and to hear his message, the more they're going to like it, they're going to like him, which is why people pointed out his concession speech last night was almost the Bernie Sanders stump speech. But think about it. For millions and millions of Americans, that was the first time that they really... Because they don't all watch. They don't all watch the debates.
Absolutely,
like
it's a very good point.
It's the first time that they'd had a chance to really get to see him. One other point that I made last night is another reason why we have to take Bernie even more seriously now. People do rather is because he's got the money. Hillary, of course, put up this huge war chest, but she was hemorrhaging You know the word. Spending a lot of money in New Hampshire. And Bernie is raking the money in from small donors. People have made this point before. But this is where it's really important. Hillary's donors are mainly big donors who gave the maximum, $2,700. They can't give any more. Or $2,500, I'm sorry. Bernie's supporters, 99% of them are people like you and me.
Yeah.
Are little people who give little amounts of money, but then they could go back and give more and more and more and more and more. Bernie's average contribution, right? $27 compared to $2,500. So it's to this extent that Tad Devine yesterday told me, Bernie's chief campaign advisor, that they think they are actually going to have more money to spend than Hillary in the primaries. And it's all not a single dollar from PACs, not a single dollar from corporations, insurance companies, banks, big pharma, or anything. It's all individual contributions. More money than Hillary because she will have run out of money. Bernie is still getting in it. And proof of that last night, from the time between the time the polls closed at 8 p.m. and midnight, Bernie had raised $2.6 million in small contributions online. 4 hours, $2.6 million small contributions online. Yeah, there you go. Now, on the Republican side, we got to go through those very quickly here before we get to David Jackson again. Okay, when I left CNN last night,
just a little while ago, let's be honest.
This morning, when I left CNN this morning, Donald Trump at 35, over twice as many votes as John Kasich, who did come in second. Ran a good, substantive, clean campaign, came in second.
Very
good for John
positive.
Kasich. I like him. And then the race was really for who was going to come in third. It looks like barely it was Ted Cruz over Jeb Bush.
Jebby.
And then Marco Rubio, and then Chris Christie. Cruz at 12%, Bush at 11%, Rubio at 10%. By the way, that
what
debate,
a disappointment for
that
Marco
debate
Rubio.
really, really did hurt him.
Fifth place.
Yeah.
Fifth place.
And Chris Christie, who's the one who did Rubio in, and as I pointed out a couple of times, it looked like he beat Rubio, but he didn't win anything. The people who were benefited from it were Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, and John Kasich.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Christie did them all a big favor. They should all be sending him flowers this morning.
Carly, forget it. Carson, forget him. It looks like there are going to be 5 tickets for the Republicans out of New Hampshire. Donald Trump with the big one, John Kasich, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and Marco Rubio, and they will all be in South Carolina today if they're not already there.
Is this it for Chris Christie? He's done?
He went home to New Jersey. He said he was going to go home, get a good night's sleep, and then he and his family were going to talk about it this morning, and they'd have something to say. You know what that means?
He's out.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who's not done. Jim Gilmore.
Jim Gilmore is ready. He already released his schedule for South Carolina.
You know what? He just goes and checks into a Motel 8. Yeah. That's his campaign. Man, I got to tell you. All right. Again, David Jackson, USA Today, with the Republican candidates in New Hampshire. His first-person report and his take. I don't want to find out what big election parties he went to.
Oh,
last
my
night.
God.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, he's a party animal, that David Jackson. All right, we'll talk to him next.
Your progressive headquarters for the 2016 election. This is The Bill Press Show.
A letter to the girl I used to be. Dear Emily, every time I watch baseball, a voice I no longer recognize whispers, Ethan, do you remember? When you were going to be the first girl to play in the Major League Seattle Mariners rally cap. But to be honest, Emily, I don't. Dad told me that like it was someone else's bedtime story. But I do know you had that drive. Didn't let anyone tell you to wear shorts above your knees. Didn't care if boys thought your hair fell on your shoulders just right, but with girls, Sleepovers meant the space between your shoulder and hers was a 6-inch fatal territory. The year you turned 11 was the first time you said out loud that you didn't want to live anymore. In therapy, you said you wouldn't make it to 21. On my 21st birthday, I thought about you. You were right. At 19, you started to fade. I tried to cross you out like a line in my memoir I wished I could erase completely. And maybe I'm misunderstanding the definition of death, but even though parts of you still exist, you are not here. Most of my friends have never heard your name until now. I've been trying to write this letter for 6 months. I still can't decide if it should be an apology or not. But now you will never hear Emily Smith announced at a college graduation. Get married. Give birth. When the prescribed testosterone started taking effect, my body stopped producing the potential for new life every month. I thought about your children, how I wanted them too. I let a doctor remove your breasts so that I could stand up straighter. Now, even if I somehow had those children, I wouldn't be able to nourish them. My body is obsolete, scarred cosmetic, but never C-section. I was 4 days late. They will never be grandparents. I was 1 week late. They will never hold their lover's sleeping figure. I was 11 days late. They will never breathe in a sunset and a sunrise in the same night. I was 2 weeks late. They will never learn to jump rope. I was 3 weeks late. They will never shout, "Watch, Mommy, watch me on the slide." I was 2 months late. A piece of us will never wrap their arms around our leg for comfort, but just to keep them from falling down. And I am sorry that this process is so slow, and all you can do is wonder if you ever had a place. You did. You still do. Don't forget that. Yours, Ethan. P.S. I never hated you.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, here we go now at 13 minutes before the top of the hour, the morning after the big blowout in New Hampshire on the part of Bernie Sanders for the Democrats, Donald Trump for the Republicans. The New York Daily News. I got on my cell phone on the set at CNN about 1 o'clock this morning. I don't know if you saw it, Peter. It's a picture of Donald Trump in a clown mask or wearing clown makeup, and the big headline is "Dawn of the Brain Dead." So much for the people of New Hampshire. But in New Hampshire, since we talked to him last, following the Republican candidates, our good buddy David Jackson, White House correspondent for USA Today. David, early good morning for you.
Early good morning to you. I saw you on CNN at 1 o'clock in the morning. I can't believe you're there.
2 hours.
Impressed.
I can't believe he was there.
2 hours.
I can't believe he's there now.
No, we got off the air at 2 o'clock this morning. Two hours sleep, David. Hey, that's all you need,
man.
right? Man.
There you go.
All right, so who were you following around, and what was your take? Were you surprised at how big the Trump win was?
A little surprised at the margin. I've been following around Trump, and the question in my mind was whether he was going to get 30% or not.
Really?
And he did. He got well over 30%. He doubled up the nearest competition.
He
got more votes
outperformed
than
the polls. Yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah, very much so. And there was a lot of enthusiasm. I can't say I was surprised he won. I was a little surprised at the margin, and the so-called Republican establishment, I think, has a big problem on its hands because I think he's going to be hard to stop.
I do, too. I think he might even be unstoppable. How about John Kasich? Ran a totally different kind of campaign, and it really fit New Hampshire, but does he have the wherewithal to go on?
Hard to say because a lot of conservative Republicans aren't really fond of Kasich. They didn't like the campaign he ran up here in New Hampshire. He basically called some of the Republicans heartless. He talked about working with the Democrats, which is anathema to some people on the Republican side. So it's interesting. John Weaver helped run Kasich's campaign, and of course he won here with John McCain back in the day, and Kasich ran a similar campaign. Now, it reminded me a little bit of the McCain campaign in 2000, which didn't go anywhere after New Hampshire. But the fact is now he's in the mix, and I'm sure he's somebody the Republican establishment will look for as a champion to try to blunt Trump. That's a big crowded field now, though. We added Kasich's name to a list that already included Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush. So the establishment's going to have a hard time finding someone who can break through. And they not only have to beat Trump, they have to beat Ted Cruz, who had a pretty good night too.
Well, I was just going to ask you about Ted Cruz because, I mean, the winning in Iowa, but he basically got the bronze last night without even working for it, didn't he?
Right, he did. He worked it. I mean, he wasn't here all week, but he did work it. He would have multiple event days. It's true he's looking more towards South Carolina and the Southern primaries.
Yeah.
But I think the Cruz people felt like they could get second place, and that was not an impossible hope, as it turned out. They just couldn't pass John Kasich.
Right. Yeah. But, I mean, he had not been there like
no.
Kasich has been nowhere but New Hampshire, right?
Cruz was the one of all the group we're talking about, including Christie and Bush. Cruz was the one who I think he actually took off a couple of days from New Hampshire campaign in other states.
Now, Jeb's goal was to beat Rubio.
Yes.
Which I guess he barely did, or maybe didn't. I'm not sure. They were going back and forth early this morning, but at least his goal was to keep himself alive, and he accomplished that goal, though, didn't he?
I guess so, but when you stand up in front of a bunch of people and say my campaign's not dead, that's not the greatest sign in the world. It will help.
Yeah, I mean that's bad.
But yeah, he was. They felt like he'd get. Early on, they felt like they had a shot at second place too, until it emerged that Kasich had the edge on everybody. But yeah, he's looking to South Carolina because he does have a good campaign staff there. He does have a good ground game, as it were, and the Bush name means something in South Carolina. So Bush was kind of determined one way or another to get to South Carolina to test out his new persona. So that was kind of baked in the cake. But yeah, I didn't think it was all that great a finish for Bush, but they seemed pleased.
And his big brother's going to show up in South Carolina.
Exactly. Well, that's what he said. Yeah. I mean, I'll be interested. I think there's a lot of assessing going on in Team Bush about how to go forward from this. But it does look like he's going to South Carolina now. Jeb Bush has said President Bush is going to come down and campaign for him in South Carolina, but we'll see.
See if he shows up. Right. So after Iowa, we saw Mike Huckabee and Rick Santorum and Rand Paul recognize the reality and step aside. Whose turn is it this time?
I think it's going to be Chris Christie because it was interesting yesterday afternoon. The Christie campaign said I noticed he was going to be in Charleston today for a big conservative forum. The big conservative group down there that's had these candidate forums. Christie was going to do his tomorrow in Charleston. Well, lo and behold, when it turned he finished sixth here, they said I noticed that he is canceling events in South Carolina. He's going back.
Whoa.
I think we kind of know what that future is going to be.
Yeah, I think we know that. He's going to make some kind of an announcement today, he said, after he has a chance to reassess it. And what about Ben Carson? I know he went down to South Carolina yesterday afternoon. He wasn't even in New Hampshire for his victory party. But, I mean, look, everybody knows it's over for him but him, maybe, I guess, right?
I think so, too. Well, but he doesn't have to spend a lot of money to campaign and to get on television and be effective. And he's got a pretty solid core of religious voters who will back him. It's not a big number, but there's a group there. But both him and Carly Fiorina say they're going to plow on. So
really, Carly,
it may be Carly. That's what she said last night. So I mean, I find it hard to believe, but the fact is, it doesn't cost these guys a lot of money. They can still get airtime, and I guess there's some cachet to being able to say you're a presidential candidate. But those two, I think, are get very small numbers moving forward.
Yeah. No, I think Jim Gilmore and Ben Carson are sharing a room down in Charleston.
I talked to someone. Someone who bumped into Jim Gilmore in New Hampshire a couple of days ago, and he was outlining how he was going to get like 75,000 votes in New Hampshire. It was kind of, I mean, and when you're out there campaigning, and people are telling you how great you are, no matter where you are in the polls, it distorts your judgment sometimes.
All right, now where are you heading next?
I'm heading to D.C. to replenish on Thursday, but I'm going to be in South Carolina Friday night.
Oh man.
What can't wait. It's going to be a great race.
All right, you got it. Okay, David, we'll catch up with you wherever you are, man. We'll be there.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Good luck.
David Jackson, usatoday.com.
Follow us on Twitter @BP Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
So you're drowning in student debt, and it looks like there's no way out. Have you considered bankruptcy? Of course not. It's a dirty word, and everything you've heard says students can't file anyway. It didn't start that way. Bankruptcy laws were enacted in the 19th century to give people a fresh start. But not all debt is created equal. Take this, for example. We have you, your buddy Carlos, and your grandma Lucy. Carlos got laid off. His credit card debt was too much to handle, so he filed for bankruptcy. Will totally screw his credit, but at least he can start fresh, and after 10 years, his credit report should be fine. Grandma Lucy's home lost half its value. Now her mortgage isn't worth paying back. She says F it and decides to file for bankruptcy too. Then there's you. You didn't land that dream job, you're struggling to make ends meet, but the interest just keeps piling up. With a broken heart, you've written off the possibility of buying a home, having kids, and getting married because, hello, who wants to deal with your crazy baggage? But in reality, you want those things, and your education was supposed to get you there. Now you need a fresh start, just what bankruptcy was intended for. You try to file, like Carlos and Grandma Lucy, and that's when you realize it's not as easy for you as it was for them. In the 70s, Congress worried that students were using bankruptcy to abuse loan programs. That wasn't quite true. Still, over the years, Congress gradually stripped student debtors of their options. The Bankruptcy Reform Act of 1978 was even called discriminatory toward students by the chairman of the subcommittee. Student debt was singled out and lumped with criminal debts. Today, if student debtors try filing for bankruptcy anyway, they'll need to prove their debt imposes an undue hardship. But who's to say what qualifies as an undue hardship? Even some judges have said they don't get it. This lack of clarity in the law could work in your favor. A Harvard researcher discovered in 2012 that few students actually try to discharge their loans through bankruptcy. Of the students who filed for bankruptcy to settle other debts, only 0.1% try the same tactic on their school debt. The craziest part? Just under half of them got their debts fully or partially discharged. In other words, you can file for bankruptcy on your student loans. Depending on your situation, it might just be a matter of trying. At least there's that.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, we've got a great lineup coming up here for the rest of the program the next 2 hours. Congressman Dan Kildee from Michigan, the man who represents Flint, Michigan, and has been fighting to get some justice and some relief for the residents of Flint, made it a national issue, will be here in studio with us. And we'll go back to New Hampshire and talk to several reporters up there who have been covering the scene, both sides of the aisle. I will also talk to the Democratic state chair of New Hampshire to get his take on how Bernie did as well as he did yesterday.
This
hour number
is
2
the Bill
coming up.
Press
Stay
Show.
tuned.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
All right, guys, I want to take the last part of the day to change our focus and talk a little bit about water. There's rivers, there's lakes, there's huge oceans. You get thirsty, you just go and you get some water, right? We rely on rain for our water. We even rely on snow. But what if it doesn't rain? What if it doesn't snow? We have to get the word out about water conservation. I want you to tell your parents, your friends, your neighbors, how important it is to save water. It's up to you guys to save the planet. All right? What if it doesn't rain? What if it doesn't snow? We have to get the word out about water conservation. It's up to you guys to save the planet. Hi, I'm Mark LaFleur, and I produced the short film you just watched called Aquaforce. California is experiencing one of the worst droughts it's ever had, and now, more than ever, it's important for everyone to do their part to help conserve water. The reason I made this film is because I wanted to make something fun and informative that would get people talking about the California drought. Obviously, this is an important issue because we have a limited amount of clean drinking water. I think it was very important to let people know, especially young people, that this is an important resource, maybe our most important resource, and it's something that we can't take for granted and we certainly can't waste. I really wanted this to be something that children would respond to. The kind of thing that any kid anywhere in the world, no matter what language they speak, could understand the story and be entertained by it and leave it knowing that this is something important, that if they didn't already know about this, that it's now going to be a part of the way that they think about water, the way that they live life, and that it's something that they'll share with their friends. The fact that they watch this video once or twice and they immediately understand that water is important, that's it. That was the whole point of this thing, to get it into the conversation, to make it something that kids are thinking about, talking about, that they're aware of, and that they know is important. This project was self-funded, so we relied on the support of our community to make it happen. It was pretty amazing to just have our neighbors, our friends, and our coworkers come together and volunteer their time and their homes and their kids to make this thing happen. Thanks for checking out the video. Keep the Aquaforce going, and thanks for watching Free Speech TV.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Bernie Sanders says we need a political revolution. Well, the political revolution has begun last night in New Hampshire. Hello, everybody. What do you say? Here we are, the Bill Press Show on Wednesday, February 10. On to Nevada, on to South Carolina, with a big head of steam on the part of Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. How about it? It is the Bill Press Show. We're here with you on your local progressive talk radio station. We're here with you on Free Speech TV. Great to see you today, and it was good to be with you on CNN last night, all through the evening, up until 2 a.m. East Coast time this morning. So if I'm dragging a little bit, damn it, I've got a right to drag this morning.
You get a pass today.
Slur my words.
You get a pass today.
If I fall asleep at the microphone, that will be too. Please wake me up. Don't let me do that.
I'll just throw something at you. Just throw wads of paper at you until you wake up.
It could happen. All right. We're here in Washington looking to hear from you what it all means. These candidates are headed your way, particularly those of you in Nevada and South Carolina, but it won't be long before the month of March. Something like 66%, jotted it down last night, of all delegates will be chosen during the month of March alone. So that's going to be a big play next year. 56% of all delegates selected during the month of March. It's going to be rock and roll.
Man.
And, of course, we've
Buckle
got,
up.
again, Nevada and South Carolina before the end of the month. So give us a call. Tell us what you think about last night's returns. 866-55-PRESS, 866-55-77-377. Send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show with Peter Ogburn and Jamie Benson. We're off to go.
Here we go.
Good morning. To the races.
Hey, Bill.
Ray Rogers, she wants to hear from you and take your calls at 866-55-PRESS and Cyprian Bolding here on the little video machine, keeping us looking good. Our videographer, Cyprian Bolding. So I'm very upset that yesterday was Mardi Gras, and I didn't even know it. I don't know. I got through the whole day until on CNN last night, and Donna Brazil has these Mardi Gras beads on. And I said, WTF? What are you wearing that for? She said, it's Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
My God, she even brought in some pralines.
Pralines,
if
you will.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, I didn't mean that.
You know how he is with that.
I didn't mean to hit you with an actually on air.
Hey,
but
Peter, is it pecans or pecans?
It's pecan, like recon.
Ah, got it.
No, it's not.
Easy way to remember that.
All right, but okay, pralines. She brought some pralines too. But why didn't we know it was Mardi Gras the other day? It was another big day I didn't know about. But Jimmy Fallon pointed it out last night. We missed this one too.
Not only was today the New Hampshire primary, it was also National Pizza Day.
Whoa.
So one way or the other, Chris Christie will be giving a victory speech, and it's going to be a great day.
No.
Oh, poor Chris Christie. Well,
oh dear.
I hope he celebrated National Pizza Day because he didn't celebrate the New Hampshire primary, and it looks like he'll be out today. It's too bad. I mean, in a perverse way, I kind of like Chris Christie.
Yeah, I get that.
And, the whole thing was, it's like, there's a parallel here. He was supposed to be the loudmouth, in-your-face, tell it like it is candidate, and then Donald Trump came along.
Yeah.
Martin O'Malley was supposed to be the liberal, progressive alternative to Hillary, and then Bernie Sanders came along. So, go figure.
Yeah,
right?
You can't
fair.
plan this stuff.
Congressman Dan Kildee from Flint, Michigan, here in studio with us. We'll have reporters from The Hill and start off with National Journal's Adam Wallner here at the top of the hour. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. This is some legislation I can get behind. Congressman Steve Cohen from Tennessee wants to get you a little more leg room the next time that you fly. He's a member of the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee's Aviation Subcommittee, and he introduced the Seat Egress in Air Travel Act earlier this week. It's called the SEAT, S-E-A-T Act. Get it? Because he wants to establish seat size standards for airplanes. So right now, airplanes can sort of dictate how big their seats are, right? They want to fit more seats on the plane so that they can sell more tickets. And usually that means cutting into leg room, cutting into the space between the armrests, things like that. But he says he wants to make sure that Americans have the leg room that we have earned as Americans. Quote, consumers are tired of being squeezed both physically and fiscally by airlines. Shrinking seat sizes isn't just a matter of comfort, but safety and health.
But I don't get it. I mean, if you want a bigger seat, just fly first class.
Yeah.
Man of the people. Man of the people.
Is that a Donald Trump comment?
Make American Airlines great again.
There you go.
Right.
One of the things that came out of the Super Bowl was after the Broncos scored their final touchdown, there was a camera shot that looked in on the Manning family, right? Peyton Manning, the quarterback of the Denver Broncos, looked in at his mom, his dad, his brother Eli, and his brother Eli seemed to not be very happy about his brother's success. He had sort of a concerned look on his face.
Or he saw a ghost.
Yeah, it looked like he'd seen a ghost. Some people were saying that maybe this is because now he wasn't going to be the brother with more Super Bowl rings. But Eli clarified yesterday. He said that the only reason he was making that face and looked so sort of concerned is he was wondering and worried whether or not they should go for a 2-point conversion, and he was thinking mentally of whether or not they should do this. Look, Eli Manning, if you think about it in this sense, Eli Manning has seen a lot of 14-point leads disappear in the last 3 minutes of a football game as the quarterback of the Giants.
Yeah,
so he probably was thinking worst-case scenario. So, and if you've been to Las Vegas recently, you've seen there's a casino there, the Link Casino, that has the big Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
Right? There's a big Ferris wheel down there in Las Vegas now. They call it the happiest half hour in Vegas. You go on, there's a little cabin that you get in, and you go around on a big Ferris wheel, right? You have a little bit of privacy, but everybody can see what you're doing.
Oh.
See where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A couple was busted having sex on the Ferris wheel over the weekend, this past weekend. And everybody could see what was happening, including all the passengers that were taking cell phone video of them actually in flagrante. They were actually arrested when they stopped. They were charged with a couple of different things. Excessive nudity is a charge that you could get hit with in Las Vegas, of all places. And so we're waiting to hear how that couple, how their court case goes.
And there are plenty of other places in Las Vegas.
A lot of places in Las Vegas to do that.
You got it. Hey, I'll tell you one thing. It was a hot time in the Old Town last night up in New Hampshire. Yes, with stunning victories. Seriously, stunning wins by both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. Adam Wallner is covering 2016 for the National Journal, and he also puts out every day the 2016 newsletter, which we take full advantage of here on the Bill Press Show. Joining us on the news line from Manchester. Hello, Adam.
Good morning, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Were you up all night with all the victory parties celebrating Ben Carson's big victory?
It was actually a surprisingly early night. The networks called it for Trump and for Sanders pretty early. I was pleasantly surprised.
That was a refreshing evening last night. They did it for Fat Tuesday. Everybody that
I don't know, but
that's right.
You know what? And there was no doubt about it, right? Because I was at CNN, and they just boom right away, right 8:00, no hesitation, based on the exit polls, and everybody made the same call. Nobody held it up, I don't think, did they? Right? Says sometimes they do. I don't know that anybody said too close to call.
No, right? Yeah, it was pretty immediate right at 8:00 there, and but it's kind of what we expected too. Trump and Sanders came in with such overwhelming leads. It was all eyes were on second place, at least on the Republican side.
Right. On the Democratic side, have you covered both sides, or just so I'm clear? Right.
Yeah, I've covered both sides. It feels like, for most of the past year, a lot of our efforts were focused on the Republican side because we just weren't really sure how much of a race there was going to be. But all of a sudden, this Sanders-Clinton matchup looks pretty interesting.
Right. So let's talk then the Republican side. I mean, it was the big battle seemed to be obviously Donald Trump outperformed the polls, but could Ted Cruz have any showing after Iowa? And then who was going to be the establishment candidate, right, or the establishment track, as they were calling it, or the establishment ticket, and it ended up being kind of a battle for third place after John Kasich popped up. So how does that all shake out, do you think? Who goes on to South Carolina?
Right. So I think for John Kasich, at least, last night might end up being the peak of his campaign. He spent a lot of time in New Hampshire. I think only Chris Christie spent more days campaigning in New Hampshire over the past year, and New Hampshire, of course, since independent voters can choose to vote in either primary, that seemed to really benefit John Kasich. He ran kind of the John Huntsman playbook from 4 years ago, seemed to win over a lot of those voters. But at least it's unclear to me how much he can build momentum going into South Carolina and Nevada, where he hasn't spent nearly as much time and doesn't quite have the organization. Whereas, Jeb Bush, I think his team has to be, at least satisfied with the fourth place finish, especially since they finished ahead of Senator Rubio. And they've already kind of telegraphed that because he really has a strong organization in South Carolina. He has a lot of allies there dating back from his brother and his father's time in office. And they're telegraphing they're going to go after Rubio and Kasich particularly hard there. And they think that they can really start to build a comeback in South Carolina and then on to Nevada.
And then, Ted Cruz moves in there again, winning Iowa, placing a respectable third, right, in New Hampshire without having to really work that hard for it. I mean, he didn't spend a lot of time in New Hampshire until after Iowa, and then now he goes on to South Carolina with another big evangelical base there.
Right, yeah, New Hampshire is definitely not Ted Cruz's state.
Right.
As you mentioned, the evangelicals are the core of his base, and they make up a much smaller percentage of the electorate in New Hampshire than Iowa or South Carolina. So going into South Carolina, you have to look at Trump and Cruz is probably the two early favorites there. And again, you're going to see kind of the same battle on the establishment side of the aisle. Bush, Rubio, Kasich, they're all going to be in the race. At Governor Christie, it's unclear whether or not he'll be joining them. He went home to New Jersey last night. He's going to be making a decision today, it sounds like, about whether or not he's going to stay in the race. It looks like he's going to be out, but even so, with Bush, Rubio, Kasich, all kind of going after each other, I think that all kind of is good news for the likes of Trump and Cruz in a state like South Carolina, where the electorate is more conservative.
Now, I do want to mention of their speeches last night, maybe the most unusual was Marco Rubio. Jamie, if we could pull that up. He all this talk about whether or not the debate might have hurt him, and all the denial from the Rubio campaign until last night when Rubio met with his supporters after it was clear how poorly he had done. Here he is.
I did not do well on Saturday night, so listen to this. That will never happen again.
Well, we'll find. We'll see about that, right? Never happen again. Never happen again. Never happen again. But he sort of fessed up that he was sailing until Saturday night, and that really did hurt him.
Right, going into that debate Saturday night, a lot of people were speculating not only, could Senator Rubio take second, could he possibly even win in New Hampshire? And then, of course, he finished a very disappointing fifth place last night. But, I don't think it's necessarily over for Senator Rubio. He'll have to rebound at the next debate on Saturday. And his team has always looked at South Carolina as a state where they think they can do pretty well. A lot of his top advisors are from South Carolina. They've had a team in place there for a long time. But the flip side of that is if he doesn't do well in South Carolina, and especially if Governor Bush finishes ahead of him there, boy, it's going to be really tough for him to convince a lot of those, kind of establishment-type figures and donors who were beginning to gravitate towards him before Saturday and now have a little more unease about it. It's going to be really difficult for Senator Rubio to convince them to team up with him if he isn't able to have a really strong performance in South Carolina's primary.
It also it appears that some of the big donors, Republican donors, establishment donors who were counting on his strong showing in New Hampshire, they were going to get behind him, and he would be the establishment alternative to Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. After what happened in New Hampshire, now may be holding back, right? So he may have that problem as well in terms of raising big bucks that he's going to need. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, he was, you kind of started to see after that third place finish in Iowa, every day they kind of leaked out a new endorsement from a prominent official or a prominent donor, and they kind of signaled that more were on the way.
Right.
But I think over these next 10 days or so, I think you'll see a lot of these establishment types kind of sit in their hands, wait and see what happens there before deciding kind of who to get behind. And again, I think this is all pretty good news for Donald Trump, because as long as Bush and Rubio and Kasich, they're all focusing on taking down each other, Trump is just going to continue to rise to the top.
Yeah, I think he could be unstoppable. I really do. All right, you can follow Adam Waldner at thenationaljournal.com and sign up for the 2016 newsletter. Adam, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, nationaljournal.com.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
This is the story of my grandfather. When I was 19 years old, his right hand was crushed in a printing press. He was supposed to lose the hand, but a young doctor saved it just in time for the war. This is the story of the war. My grandfather repaired tanks. Behind the front lines, away from the cameras, he would pull pieces of dead men from the machines and send the machines back out to the field. This is the story of the war a decade later. Back then, you didn't talk about depression. There was no such thing as PTSD. When my uncle, age 7, asked him who won the war, my grandfather said, nobody. This is the story of my grandfather, the machinist. I have a newspaper from 1981, a story about the Nobel Prize for Physics, a photograph of the winner, a Harvard man standing by his machines. This man is not my grandfather. Beneath the photo, my grandfather has written, I designed and built almost everything in this picture. They worked together for 10 years, but my grandmother says the physicist never even remembered his name. If you asked that Harvard man, there would be no story of my grandfather, just a pair of disembodied hands. This is the problem with stories. They have to leave something out. The editor cuts a line and someone's face fades. The editor says 200 words or less and suddenly a whole family goes missing. The spotlight isn't about the light, it's how it makes everything around it dark. My grandfather's face is erased from every story. The machines survive, but the man who made them doesn't. The machines make the photo, but their maker is out of frame. But we choose where to point the camera. We can choose how to tell the story. We can choose which clothing the hero wears. I could tell you this is a story about a soldier, or I could tell you this is a story about the blue-collar man, but really, this is just the story of my grandfather. I did not know him. I was born too late, but my family tells me his name. Alfred Franzosa. I know that name might only live in this moment. that there are other stories with greater stakes, but still, I will tell you his name. I will repair this old machine. I will let my grandfather live again because I could not know him while he was living. Once, when he was younger than I am now, his right hand was crushed by a printing press, crushed by other people's stories. When it healed, he began to build. He used his hands to build tanks and his hands to build cradles. His hands were the last thing to touch dead soldiers and the first to touch his newborn sons. He built a good family, and that family built me, and now I use my hands to build his story. The story is not a eulogy. A eulogy seals the casket. A eulogy lets no air out. This story is a resurrection. Jesus was not resurrected by God. He was brought back by the people who told his stories. It does not take a miracle to raise the dead, to leave behind the tombstone and take the name with you.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, now 27 coming up. There it is, 27 minutes after the hour. Kate Martell from The Hill, also on Radio Row in New Hampshire, will be joining us at the half hour. Again, it was this. They were calling it the muddle in the middle, and that's where most of the attention went last night because it was so clear early on that Bernie was a blowout winner on the Democratic side and that Donald Trump was a blowout winner on the Republican side with John Kasich clearly in second place. And after that, that's where it all gets mixed up. And in that mix, let's start with John Kasich. Kasich basically moved to New Hampshire, made that as one base, said, here's where I'm going to make my stand. And he actually said, if I can't make it here in New Hampshire, I'm just going to go home. Well, he made it in New Hampshire with a totally different kind of campaign. Here he is last night.
We never went negative because we have more good to sell than to spend our time being critical of somebody else.
So as you've heard him when he talks, he says he thinks some of his fellow Republicans are crazy. They are impractical. They're talking about things that could never happen and should never happen. And then he has ideas of his own, particularly on about balancing the budget and on immigration reform. He is not for the Donald Trump approach at all. John Kasich did very well. We'll see if he can take that message and make any progress in the states still to come.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power,
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Streaming live video right now at youtube.com/TawkrTV. That's TAWKR-TV. This is The Bill Press Show.
About at 33 minutes after the hour, here we go, the Bill Press Show. We are coming to you live from Washington, D.C., but all the action today it's down in South Carolina. All the action last night, which we're talking about, was in New Hampshire and the nation's first primary, where Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, incredible power performances on the part of both Republican and Democrat. Donald Trump ending up, these are the numbers when I left last night. Well, I'm sorry. Early this morning.
Yeah.
At 2 a.m. East Coast time. Left the set at CNN. Donald Trump at 35. John Kasich in second place with 16. Followed by, in order, but almost the same or maybe 1 percentage point apart, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, and Marco Rubio. On the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders 60 to 39. I think that is actually gone up to 61 to 39 as of this morning. Kate Martell is staff writer for The Hill. You know, The Hill, we talk about it all the time, thehill.com. I write a column for The Hill. Kate is in New Hampshire and joins us from Manchester and Radio Row. Hello, Kate.
Hello, Bill. Thanks so much for having me. And yes, we're up at Radio Row, and it seems like everyone here has a sleep hangover, so it's a very different vibe.
Oh, well, not only in Manchester do they have sleep hangovers, but right. Now, so pretty exciting up there last night. Where were you hanging out?
So I was floating around the parties. I started at Donald Trump's victory party and then went to Jeb Bush's and Marco Rubio's. Although I should add that I couldn't actually get into the Donald Trump party. They didn't start credentialing or doing any of their security checks until after 7 p.m. once the polls started coming in, and it was a giant mob. They couldn't get any media in until about 8 p.m. outside in the cold.
Oh, whoa. Yeah, not that well organized. Yeah, the video that I saw of it from Jim Acosta, who was there, he was outside in the cold most of the time too, right?
Yeah, and it looks like that happened as well at the Hillary Clinton camp. So I guess that's just one of the problems with being in New Hampshire in February.
Well, I wouldn't imagine that the Marco Rubio party was a lot of fun. It was sort of like a wake.
Yes, that's a very good way of putting it. And I think people really didn't expect the returns to be that bad. I didn't think that at that point after Saturday they weren't expecting maybe the strong second place finish, but I don't think that they were expecting their numbers to be this low. And I think that they're going to have to caucus this morning and try to regroup and figure out how do they change the message. And from his blunder on Saturday night, I don't know how he does change his message. I don't know what could be next to try to get rid of that image that he portrayed.
No, because he certainly reinforced. I mean, the rap on him going into the debate was that this guy is robotic, right? And he just spews canned talking points and everything. And if you didn't know that before Saturday night, he just played right into that narrative.
Yeah, how bad did that debate hurt him?
You know, so I followed him around all on Sunday to all his campaign events, and he was just swinging it as, I meant to say this was a conscious decision,
right.
We calculated this. I said it 3 or 4 times, I'll say it again. He said that at every single one of his speeches. And when I talked to the voters on the ground, they weren't necessarily Marco Rubio supporters. A lot of these people had said that they were saving their vote for the establishment candidate where they thought their vote was most useful. And then following up with some of these people at the end of the event, they said that they were still supportive and still liked Marco Rubio, that this didn't necessarily hurt his campaign. So I think this surprised a lot more people, especially the fact that Donald Trump won every single county in New Hampshire.
Did he really? Every county?
Every county in New Hampshire. And
wow.
A few of the areas, like the Manchester area and some of the suburbs around, should be establishment candidate areas. That Bedford, New Hampshire, Manchester, anyone that votes Republican should be going for one of the governors or Marco Rubio.
Do you know how many counties did Bernie Sanders win?
That is a good question. And he won, I think, almost all of them. I can look up the numbers
again, right?
But yes.
Yeah. So those areas I know that we were talking about on CNN last night, where Hillary had won in 2008, where she beat President Obama, or then candidate Obama, Barack Obama, in 2008, particularly the Manchester area. Bernie won those, so she didn't have the stronghold that she thought she had residue from 2008.
He didn't, and I think what's the interesting point about that is from New Hampshire, and I know that people were saying that the reason Bernie Sanders will win, and you can expect to hear this from the Clinton camp in the following days, that the reason he won is because he's from Vermont. It's a bordering state. That's easy to say if you look at a map, but when it actually comes down to New Hampshire, there's a very big disconnect between New Hampshire and Vermont. There aren't any big highways that connect the two.
Right.
And they're not as ideologically the same as you would think. So the fact that he did this well, it points to an even bigger issue with Hillary Clinton, especially taking such as the Manchester area, the big population hubs.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you pointed that out. I've made that point too. And southern New Hampshire is much more Massachusetts than Vermont, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And over 50% of the population is on the southern border, on the southern eastern border, which, if you can picture that is the Boston media market. They don't get any Vermont stations.
Yeah.
So I think the comparison for Mitt Romney doing well in New Hampshire in 2012 holds much more water than Bernie Sanders doing well for that reason.
By the way, I want to come back, Peter, to what you said about the debate, right? So, again, the CNN, we learned this early on in the evening at CNN. The early exit polls showed, one of the questions they asked people going in, did the last debate make any difference, right? in how you voted, okay? Among Democrats, 53% said, yeah, the last debate between Hillary and Bernie did make a difference. They paid a lot of attention to it. 53%. Among Republicans, 65% said the debate had made a big difference. When I saw that number, this is before we had any vote totals, right? This was like 5 o'clock East Coast time, so the polls were still open for 3 hours. I knew that was Marco Rubio was in trouble. If 65% of Republicans said, yep, I made my decision based on how they performed in that last debate, or at least it influenced my decision. So it's going to be hard. I think it's going to be very hard for him to recover from that. And would you agree that this is the end of the road for Chris Christie? It seems most people, and he's sort of indicated that, Kate.
Yes, exactly. And he's put all of his eggs in the basket, in the New Hampshire basket. And the fact that he didn't see any returns on this, he doesn't have much of a ground game in the following states. I think the only two people out of the establishment ranks, that's Bush, Christie, Kasich, and Rubio, the only people that really have a strong ground game going forward are Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio that actually could be able to pull this off. But Chris Christie doesn't really have much momentum past this.
It's too bad for him in a sense because he did the deed, right?
Yeah.
Somebody
really
had to. I'm sorry.
He really added an interesting element to the debate. I know that he made it much more interesting, especially when we didn't have Donald Trump in one of the debates. Chris Christie stood up and took that spot.
Yeah. So he did the dirty deed. He took on Rubio and knocked him down. But the benefit went to Kasich and Jeb Bush and maybe Ted Cruz as well. I wanted to ask you about Ted Cruz. I mean, I have to say Ted Cruz, he may have gotten the bronze, but it's as somebody on our panel last night said, it was like he showed up at the Olympics and got the bronze without even competing in the event. He certainly didn't spend as much time anywhere near as much time in New Hampshire as Kasich and Bush, for example, and Christie.
He really did, and that's an excellent description. I hadn't thought of that comparison. And, this wasn't his territory, and I was more worried. I think that my bets were all off, and we can all go home now. But what I was saying is I didn't think he would do that well at all, especially because there's this whole group of activists in New Hampshire that usually go for the far-right candidates. And when I saw them in the past few weeks starting to rally around Marco Rubio, I thought that even with the debate, that would help boost him. Obviously, it didn't have an effect on this. And going along with that is, I think that's interesting, looking at the two Republicans that came out of this debate winning. Donald Trump, that does not bode well for retail politics in New Hampshire. He did not do the town halls. He did not go to the diners. He's actually a germaphobe and hates shaking hands with people. But then look at John Kasich, who came in number 2. That actually is a good thing for New Hampshire. He had over 100 town halls, and he really started bringing the politics back to talking about balancing the budget and things that would resonate well in New Hampshire. So it's not dynamic that New Hampshire doesn't look good for number 1, but for number 2, we're back.
Yeah. Can you imagine 100 town halls?
That's a lot. That is a lot.
He was good at them.
Yeah, he is good at that. And they're at least an hour long, right?
Yep, and he took so many questions from the audience. I think more than most candidates that I would see. And actually was very nice to the press. The press always liked working with him, too.
Now, I think I heard you say you are a resident of you're a New Hampshireite or whatever?
Yep, I'm from New Hampshire, D.C. now, yes.
All right. So what is the rule among voters of New Hampshire? How many times do you have to shake hands with a candidate before you might consider voting for him or her?
So the joke is 6 times, but...
Oh!
Yeah.
It's not a joke!
Not a joke. Although I heard some numbers recently that about 10 to 20% of New Hampshire people actually do meet and shake hands with the candidate. That still means that 80-90% of the population are getting their media or getting their consumption from the media and from the debates. But comparing that to other states, that's much higher than any other state.
No, I was going to say, do you take a big state like Ohio, right, or Texas or Florida or California, whatever, I mean, the chances of actually seeing and meeting the candidate are just, non-existent.
Yeah.
And in New Hampshire, some of the people that I saw interviewed last night basically, I've met maybe 8 of the candidates or something like that, right? Yeah. Oh, I can't vote for him. I only met him 3 times.
And what was interesting during the cycle, especially this cycle with Donald Trump, is that there was such a disconnect from the questions that the media was asking at these press gaggles and at the end of the debates or at the end of the events versus what the voters were actually asking. They were insanely politically wonky questions coming from New Hampshire voters, and then media, probably President Company included. So Donald Trump today.
That is interesting, yeah. No, those town halls, people, and we saw that with the town halls that CNN did. Yeah, they were good questions from the audience, I thought. All right, Kate. Well, it's good to catch up with you in your home state, and congratulations. We still think New Hampshire has its reputation intact, even though they elected Donald Trump. They saved themselves by giving a big win to Bernie Sanders. Thanks, Kate, for joining us.
They did. Thanks so much, Bill.
All right, The Hill, thehill.com.
Follow us on Twitter @BP Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
It occurred to me tonight, for the first time, that the long-winged insect that over and over again rams its body into the wood of my front door might not know what he's doing. He might not have a plan. Maybe that's just how he flies, and that is where the door is. And I remember you. The last time I saw you, a few weeks before we would graduate from high school, and a few days before you let a bullet dissolve on your tongue, dancing in a warehouse rave, sweat-drenched and strobe light battered, thrashing your arms back and thrusting them forward. The floor could get so bright and loud, we all slowed down to be more careful, but you kept dancing full sprint tornado, and sometimes you'd spin full weight into a wall and just spread your arms against it and sway back and forth like a lover reunited. This long-winged insect is not trying to get into the house. It doesn't know there is a house. Can't imagine a life beyond that door. All it can see is the light. You and I were both 17 when you died. And ever since then, I have envied you. How you are remembered for towering, unclaimed potential instead of living to look regret in the face. You didn't have to come home 3 weeks later and explain to your little brother why you took too much medicine. Your addiction is remembered as a tragedy, not a betrayal. Your suicide attempt became a suicide, not an unpaid hospital bill. And only tonight did it occur to me that maybe that night when you let your teeth touch metal, you might not have known what you were doing. You might not have had a plan. Maybe you had hit that door so many times you couldn't imagine it might let you through. I'm still ashamed to admit it, but I have always secretly believed you did it for me, that you wanted to show me that there is a way out of all of this. Not so that I would follow you, but so I would understand that every day that I am alive is a day that I choose to be alive. And when the music stops, you still get to keep on dancing. And when the light is so bright it blinds, you can dance with your eyes closed. And if in that dark you come up against a wall, you keep your arms out wide and you dance with the wall.
All the presidential candidates straight with your progressive headquarters for the 2016 election. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right. Read this book. That's what Bernie Sanders says. So, damn it, do it. That's right. The Bernie says... The Bernie says that about buyer's remorse. My latest book. out just a week, so you can find it in your local bookstore or on Amazon.com, of course. And you can get a signed copy, a signed copy for yourself or a good friend or somebody, maybe not a good friend, that you want to read the book. Go to our website, BillPressShow.com. Right on the front, you'll see. And we got the books now. I'm going to be signing them, and we'll get them out to you right away.
Yeah.
Inscribed, signed, any way you want. Yep, with the blurb of Bernie Sanders on the back. Buyer's remorse, how Obama let progressives down. I always remind people it's not as negative as it sounds. It's a good take, I think, on the Obama administration. The good things the president has done, but the ways that he did let us down on TPP, on NSA, on the drones, and on some other issues, and on no single payer. Some of the things that Bernie Sanders, in fact, talks about. BillPressShow.com. Go to the website, get your copy of the book or copies signed. Indeed, I think, this. Just kick around this question about a little bit about, and again, your calls welcome here at 866-55-PRESS. There's so many aspects of what happened last night to talk about. But I want to go back to the impressive win of Bernie Sanders. The breadth and the depth of it is really staggering. Those of you who were in the first hour might have heard, but just to repeat, across the board, and these are the exit polls that we were given as part of the CNN political team. By the way, we were given these, and we were not allowed to talk about them until after 8 o'clock.
Okay,
we got the orders, right? But now, of course, we talk about them. But like in the age group, Bernie Sanders won people 18 to 29, 30 to 44, 45 to 64. He won the youngest group, 18 to 29, with 83. He got 83% of their vote. The only age group that Hillary Clinton won were people 65 or older. Go figure.
It's amazing.
And she barely beat Bernie in that group. Among income, Bernie wins every single category, from people who make less than $30,000 to people who make up to $200,000. Wins across the board. The only group that Hillary Clinton wins is those who are making over $200,000 a year. So, I think what this shows us is that Bernie's a serious candidate. He's a national candidate, and he's got a message that he can take. Bernie's not going to change this message when he gets to Nevada or to South Carolina. This economic populism message, which he ties into some of the issues that are very important to the African American community and the Latino community about prison reform and sentencing reform and police community relations. That message that he's got, plus the economic justice and income inequality and raising the minimum wage and putting people back to work and expanding Social Security and universal health care, that's a message that I think will resonate across the board. And then when he gets to the big Midwestern states like Ohio and Illinois and Michigan, it's his jobs message that I think will really, really resonate as well. So I think you can count on Bernie to do well beyond in the states, and there are 48 more to go, be after Iowa and New Hampshire, and particularly with this burst of new energy and people discovering Bernie for the first time, millions of Americans, is going to come a lot of new money from all these millions of small donors that Bernie has amassed. It's a grassroots political revolution started by Bernie, and man, hit the road last night in New Hampshire. We'll be right back.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
For Mike Brown. I'm sick of writing this poem, but bring the boy. His new name, his same old body, ordinary black dead thing, bring him. And we will mourn until we forget what we are mourning. And isn't that what being black is about? Not the joy of it, but the feeling when you're looking at your child, turn your head, then poof, no more child. That feeling, that's black. Think, once a white girl was kidnapped, and that's the Trojan War. Later, up the block, Troy got shot, and that was Tuesday. Are we not worthy of a city of ash, of 1,000 ships launched because we are missed? I demand a war to bring the black boy back, no matter what his name is this time. I at least demand a song. A song will do. Or a head.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, on the road again with President Obama out to Springfield, Illinois. It was 9 years ago that the president launched his campaign for president, if you remember, on the steps of the old Capitol in Springfield, Illinois. And the president's going back there to address the Illinois General Assembly today. I think a little celebration is in order there. He is then going to also meet with a group of supporters in the area. And then he goes on to San Jose, California. Has a couple of DNC events tonight, fundraising events in San Jose, California, before he then goes down to Summerland near Palm Springs for a couple of days of golf and a little diplomacy while he's there. We'll be back to Congressman Dan
This is
Kildee.
the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting him in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
One of the most profound movements and one of the first real social movement in American history was all about slavery. And that's labor. And it was about creating a different kind of democracy, different kind of way of thinking about the economy. And I think these battles aren't over. The African American portion of American wealth as a whole is 3% today. And the last time it was 3% was in 1868, 3 years after slavery. African Americans going back to before the Civil War, and the earliest African American spokespersons and writers and leaders like Frederick Douglass and others argued that the fundamental feature of the American economy was dehumanization. And they also argued that you can't have a democratic constitution and an economic system that degrades and exploits people. Many of the radical Republicans who fought for the Civil War and in the Civil War believed the same thing. I think the true intent of the 13th Amendment wasn't just to eliminate chattel slavery. It was to eliminate all forms of economic oppression and create what we would now call living wages for everybody. I think that was the true intent. But these things were overthrown. After the Civil War, there was a counter-revolution, Lincoln's assassination, the destruction of Reconstruction. We got segregation, which wasn't just about making white people feel superior, it was about a cheap labor force, which persisted. The 1963 March on Washington, where everyone sees Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, well, King wasn't head of that march. A. Philip Randolph was, the first black trade union president. The demand of the march was for jobs and freedom. Jobs came even before freedom. That sort of dream of a new kind of economy was tightly connected with thinking about voting rights and a new kind of politics. And when African Americans said we refuse to work as basically semi-slave laborers with no rights and no voting rights and no protections, and my generation said we're not going to do that work that our parents did, then employers started bringing undocumented immigrants into the country to work with no rights and no protections. And when the government said, well, what are we going to do with all these young folks like me who don't want to do this kind of semi-slave work? They didn't reform the economy. They said, let's lock them up. And we got mass incarceration. And so I think all of these things are related to our history. All of these things are part of the challenge of changing the system. And the system connects these things.
This is why you took a second job. While you taught yourself how to fix the plumbing. While you'll do whatever it takes to keep your home. And that is why we want to help. We are making home affordable, a free government resource that can make paying the mortgage easier. Call 888-995-HOPE today.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
On your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
The political revolution has begun in a big way in New Hampshire last night. Bernie Sanders trouncing Hillary Clinton 21 points. Donald Trump trouncing all the Republican candidates. Double what John Kasich got for number 2. But just to show that can't be too impressed with Donald Trump's showing last night. Bernie Sanders alone got more votes than Donald Trump and John Kasich combined. So take that. How about it? What a day, what a night, what a lot to talk about here. Good to see you today. It's the Bill Press Show. We're here in our nation's capital, in our studio on Capitol Hill, with all the news of the primary last night and other news that's going on here in Washington on Capitol Hill. And we particularly want to get an update on that important situation, and this is just a sad situation, out in the city of Flint, Michigan, from the congressman who represents that area and has been the champion of bringing relief to the residents of Flint, Michigan, our good friend Congressman Dan Kildee. Congressman, great to see you today.
Thank you.
Boy, you got your, you got your hands full. If you're not bringing hostages home from Iran, you're.
Where are you going soon, Bill?
Yeah, you're replacing lead pipes in Flint. I mean,
Right.
man.
It's like Captain America over
I
here.
know, right?
We do our best.
It's exactly what Captain America would say,
Right.
by the way.
Very humbly.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And you are. You've got a hearing today, and
Right.
and some legislation today. We want to hear all about that. You join our team here, of course, Peter Ogburn and Jamie Benson. They didn't get as much sleep as if they look better than I do this morning. It's because
they look pretty chipper.
Yeah, hey, I feel great.
They got a little more. They got a little more
the other way
sleep
around.
They got a little more sleep than I did.
Election results were called by 8 o'clock. The speeches were done by like 9:15.
Why did you stay up so late, Bill?
That's what I want to know. I want to know why, if we knew who the winner was at 8, that we had to stay in the air until 2 a.m.
The American people needed to understand why and how this all happened, and I'm sure you were
Let
able
me tell
to.
you, between 1 and 2, we didn't say anything worth repeating.
Who are you talking to at that point? You know what I mean?
Theoretically, there were some people watching on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Could be.
Fakers and drinkers. That's who's up.
The Hawaiian population was grateful.
Right, American Samoa. You're big there. You're huge there.
On back to the team, Ray Rogers here to take your calls at 866-55-PRESS, and Cyprian Balding, our videographer, also on the job as well. Congressman, we'll get right to the latest news of the day, but first...
This is the Full Court Press.
Chance.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. We're not far from Valentine's Day. How's this for a love story? No matter what you get that special person in your life, you're going to fall short of this guy. His name is Christian Willenborg. He met a young woman. They went on a couple dates. And it was not long into their date that she revealed that she was only born with one kidney. Now, you can live with one kidney. You just have to go through dialysis, and it takes, like 9 hours of dialysis a day is what it comes down to. They dated. Well, that's what she was going through. They dated. They fell in love. They got engaged, and he decided, what the heck, maybe, just maybe, one of my kidneys will match yours. Turns out he was the perfect match. It was a perfect match. So he gave one of his kidneys to his new fiance. So maybe, if you buy that box of chocolates or flowers for your special someone, it's going to fall a little short of, one of your own kidneys.
It's an idea for next year, Bill.
Carol, don't ask.
Yeah. How are kidneys? That's what you want to ask before you buy anything.
I have a friend who gave one of his kidneys to his father.
Oh, really?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So in her case, she had the one kidney, but even that kidney wasn't very good, so he gave her one of the functioning kidneys.
That's cool.
Scandal in New Jersey and New York, and it all revolves around Dunkin' Donuts. They have allegedly violated state rules by charging customers sales tax on items that are not supposed to be taxed. It's a little murky when it comes to these sales tax rules on food and beverage in this area because, for example, pretzels are exempt from tax, but chocolate-covered pretzels are not exempt from tax.
Well, of course not.
Yeah, right, of course, right? Come on. But so Dunkin' Donuts has been charging customers tax on everything, and they're saying that it could be as high as 70% of all sales that they have at Dunkin' Donuts might have been overcharged. So there is currently a lawsuit going on.
Well, Chris Christie will be on the case now. Because,
he will be.
He's going to drop out. This is his passion project.
Why they give him an excuse for dropping out? I had to get on top of the donut crisis.
That's right.
Watch the bridge traffic.
Yes, exactly. We all complain about it. We all deal with it. Every now and then, our Wi-Fi connection is a little spotty at best. Well, we're not alone. President Obama has the same problem. In his interview that he gave right before the Super Bowl earlier this week, he talked about how the White House is an old building, and so there are a lot of dead spots around the building where Wi-Fi just won't work.
Yeah.
We know he's a big fan of Wi-Fi because he binge watches shows. He's told us that he binge watches certain shows like House of Cards and Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, other shows that are on demand. And he says that this is something that he's working on for the next group of folks that are going to inhabit the White House, whoever that might be. He says he wants to fix it and make sure that the next administration comes in with fully operational Wi-Fi.
Well, let me tell you something. One of the dead spots where Wi-Fi doesn't work is the briefing room.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. No, it drives reporters crazy.
That may not be accidental.
No.
That's right. Yeah, they'll fix everything but that.
It's going to remain a dead spot.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right, Congressman Flint is begging our attention, but first, so is the primary last night. I have to ask you, Bernie Sanders coming out with a 61%, and Hillary Clinton, with all of her efforts and all that history in New Hampshire, 39%. How do you read it? And I know you're a Hillary supporter.
I am. I just think this election is one where people are focused on changing politics in America, and the only tool they have, and we can't seem to get Congress to do anything about reforming our finance system for campaigns. Political reform is high on the agenda for citizens, low on the agenda for Congress. They have this one moment where they get to express that. And that's where some of Trump's support comes from, for sure.
Yep.
Cruz, probably. Yep. But with Bernie, the same, I think. There's a frustration. And the other thing, I think the important message is campaigns that succeed are about the future, not about the other candidates, not about the machinations of a campaign. Campaigns that succeed are about the future. And so I encourage all candidates to focus their attention on painting a picture of what America should look like and how we're going to get there. And if we do that, I think
and what you
our
want
politics
to do
will be
and where
better.
you'd like to take the country.
Right.
Yeah, right. But I see it, too, like you do, in the sense that I think all of us in the media and in the political establishment, if you will, kind of misread the electorate, and Bernie and Donald Trump, with different issues, right, did tap into the same frustration, disappointment, anger, at politics as usual, at the political establishment,
Sure.
right? And people kind of across the board, men, women, young, old, they want something new,
Right.
and different and positive.
And the hope is that election results like this shape the campaign, that it's not seen as sort of an anomaly or an artifact of
right.
history, but they actually shape the campaign. If that happens, if that's the message of New Hampshire, then I think we'll be going in a much better direction.
And when this campaign gets to Michigan, which is in March, I believe, right? Yeah. What are the issues going to be?
Well, I mean, jobs and the economy dominate. Michigan has
that's-
been left behind time and time again. Manufacturing, trade, big issues. And, of course, in my hometown, this whole question of the water situation, which is a tragedy unto itself, but is emblematic of a philosophy of government that has left cities behind, but a philosophy of government that really puts balance sheets ahead of people. I mean, this is what we see with Rick Snyder, lots of other governors. They bring this sort of corporate mentality as if the principles of corporate America translate to government for a society, a complex society of human beings. It just doesn't translate. That will be, I think, implicit in the debate.
We have to keep remembering, right, that this whole mess started in Flint because the governor wanted to save some money.
Save some money.
Right, and put human lives at risk. Right. Now, CNN has announced that we're going to host a Democratic debate in Flint, again in March.
In March, early March.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that good for the city or just a lot of people getting in the way?
Well, hopefully it's good for the city. I mean, I think this is a moment that we can either advantage ourselves of or just simply lose. Flint needs more than just attention, and we frankly need more than just bottled water. We need better policy. And if the moment where the spotlight is on Flint includes the Flints of America in the national conversation or creates a marker for the Flints, and it's not just Flint, places like Flint. If we become a part of the national debate, how did this happen? How could this possibly have happened? If those become questions that beg for answers, campaigns shape governments and they shape policy, then that will be a good thing. If it's treated as if it was sort of an accident, that it was an anomaly, that it was a series of sort of bad decisions made by an emergency manager, then I think it could be a lost moment, not only for the country, but a lost moment for the people of Flint, and we will see this city continue to go through the cycle of decline.
Are things getting any better today for the people? Are they better off than the last time we talked a couple of weeks ago?
Well, they're getting slowly better. The water system has been switched back to Great Lakes water. It will take some time for the orthophosphate treatment to recoat the pipes.
I was going to say, they're doing this water treatment too.
They are.
Yeah. Okay.
It takes a while, and it takes a little bit longer in Flint because the system doesn't move the way systems normally move, partly because it's too big for the population.
So how will people know when the water is safe to...
Testing, but the testing is going to have to be validated by outside third parties. No one in Flint is going to trust the state of Michigan to say the water is fine to drink. They're just not going to trust it.
Yeah.
And so there are some outside experts that have been a part of raising this issue, a guy named Dr. Mark Edwards from Virginia Tech. I know for myself, when Mark says the water is safe to drink, it sounds a little more valid to me than hearing from the very same people who told it was safe over and over again when they knew it was not.
Right. And what is the role of EPA in fixing this problem? And what was the role of EPA, before this? I mean, did they act as early as they should have to step in here?
They acted, but they acted in this sense. They went to the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality and said, look, we've got this data that shows elevated lead levels in Flint. You really need to do something about this. The state of Michigan has, quote, primacy when it comes for enforcement. The EPA can't order the DEQ, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, to act, but they can bring it to their attention. Where I think there was a failure at the federal level was that the EPA did not go public once it had that information. They made the mistake of assuming that the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality was concerned about environmental quality in Michigan. A logical assumption.
One would, yes. But they should have known, they did know whether Michigan did anything or not, and they must have seen that Michigan didn't do squat.
Right. And so from the EPA's standpoint, their answer to us was that they didn't see where they had explicit statutory authority to go public, that was supposed to be a responsibility of state. So my answer was, if you're not sure, we're going to make sure you're sure. So I have a bill actually going to the floor of the House today that will not just allow, but would require the EPA to go public if the state doesn't go public within 24 hours of us being aware of a water problem, so that citizens would be armed with information to protect themselves, but also armed with the knowledge to go to the state of Michigan and insist that they do their job. So the state couldn't just sweep this under the rug. So from the EPA standpoint, I would say that there is some responsibility. There's a question as to whether that responsibility is the fault of the folks within EPA. Some, yes. But it's also the fault of a steady drumbeat and a steady effort to weaken the EPA's authority over the environment. And so it's some of the folks who are trying to pull EPA into this are folks who are defending the state of Michigan, even some people within the state. It's pretty disingenuous for the state of Michigan to say to the EPA, stay out of our business, and then when they get caught doing something that had huge consequences for public health, say, why didn't you stop us? It's pretty disingenuous.
So that bill is on the floor today.
And I actually have all Michigan
you would think
members.
this is public health, right? That they should come. If they see that the whatever responsible agency isn't doing anything about a serious public health threat,
right,
they should go public.
They should. They should be empowered.
Empowered, yes.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's where, Democrats and Republicans might take a slightly different tack. I've lived this, and I know that had the EPA had explicit knowledge and authority that it can and should, and in this case must go public, the state of Michigan still would have made a mess of this situation, but we would have known so much earlier we could have limited the damage.
Congressman Dan Kildee with us from Flint, Michigan. That is Michigan's 5th congressional district.
The fighting 5th.
The fighting 5th. There we go. A question or a comment, and remember, as the congressman pointed out, this is not a problem limited to the city of Flint, Michigan. No way. 866-55-PRESS, and we'll be right back.
Get social with Bill Press. Like us at Facebook.com/Bill Press Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
Today, in this country, we are having a conversation about police violence, the killing of black men, and what all that means. It is sad that this is happening and that every day there's a new incident to cause us to keep thinking about it and talking about it. But it is extraordinary that the American people are having to deal with this every day, whether you're watching CNN or MSNBC, Fox, or ABC News. All the news channels are talking about police violence and what does that mean against black people. Many people probably look at that, certainly have looked at it in the past, and they have said that these poor black men are doing bad things, and that's why they are ending up in confrontations with police without any understanding of their lives of these poor black young men. Part of what has been going on for decades is that poor black people live in communities that suffer from hyper surveillance of the police. The police are more likely to be in their communities. The police are more likely to arrest them. The police are more likely to stop them even if they're not doing anything. And that is what is so hard for the American people to believe, that you would get stopped and searched and arrested by the police and not doing anything. But this is starting to come out as people are telling the stories over and over again. But this has been the condition, this hyper-surveillance by police, making it more likely for people to get a record, to be known by the police, and then once they get in the system, it is almost impossible to get out because of the whole system of being on parole and missing an appointment or fraternizing with a person who has a criminal record, getting you right back in the jail, and then going back again and again and again. This is coming to be seen by the American people in a way that it has never been seen before. But why are people in these communities in the first place? That's getting peeled away. People are there because of housing discrimination. They are there because this is the only place where affordable housing can be found. They are there because that's where their families live, and people are drawn to being in communities where they are comfortable. The combination keeps people in these low-income communities where they are an easy target for hyper-surveillance and then everything that comes from it. And so as we think about these issues, we have to understand that while you as an individual in this society, as a white individual, you may not carry personal racism, but that does not keep the system from operating in a racist way.
I grew up in the housing projects of Cleveland. I didn't even know that life could be any better than it was. Education for me has been a way to get away from the agony of what was normal life. I want to be able to impact the community, not just look back on where I came from, but to reach back to where I came from and pull some people up with me. My name is David, and I am your dividend.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, 27 minutes after the hour, jumping back up to New Hampshire after the half-hour break to talk to the chair of the Democratic Party of New Hampshire. Here in studio with us, Congressman Dan Kildee from Flint, Michigan. Congressman, what about enough with bottled water replacing the lead pipes? Is that doable? We just have about a minute here.
Yeah, it's completely doable, and it's actually, given the scale of this problem, not that expensive. It would cost $55 to $60 million to replace all those private lead service lines that run from the water main to the house, which is about half of the amount of money that people in Flint spent for water that poisoned their children. So the state, I think, could write a check tomorrow for this money.
And should. Right.
And should. The real cost is in the long-term care of the people affected by this, which is in the hundreds of millions. We did an estimate that it's about $1.5 billion that would be required to make up for the big mistakes that the Snyder administration made.
Just to care for the people who have been impacted?
Long-term. Immediate help and long-term.
Right. Wow. Well, you are on top of it, and we appreciate your good leadership there, and particularly your time here this morning, Congressman. Have a good one. We'll see you again soon.
All right. Thanks,
All
Bill.
right. Congressman Dan Kildee from Michigan.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Across from me at the kitchen table, my mother smiles over red wine that she drinks out of a measuring glass. She says she doesn't deprive herself, but I've learned to find nuance in every movement of her fork, in every crinkle in her brow as she offers me the uneaten pieces on her plate. I've realized she only eats dinner when I suggest it. I wonder what she does when I'm not there to do so. Maybe this is why my house feels bigger each time I return. It's proportional. As she shrinks, the space around her seems increasingly vast. She wanes while my father waxes. His stomach has grown round with wine, late nights, oysters, poetry, a new girlfriend who was overweight as a teenager, but my dad reports now she's crazy about fruit. It was the same with his parents. As my grandmother became frail and angular, her husband swelled to red, round cheeks, rotund stomach, and I wonder if my lineage is one of women shrinking, making space for the entrance of men into their lives, not knowing how to fill it back up once they leave. I have been taught accommodation. My brother never thinks before he speaks. I have been taught to filter. How can anyone have a relationship to food, he asks, laughing, as I eat the black bean soup I chose for its lack of carbs. I want to say we come from difference, Jonas. You have been taught to grow out. I have been taught to grow in. You learn from our father how to emit, how to produce, to roll each thought off your tongue with confidence. You used to lose your voice every other week from shouting so much. I learned to absorb. I took lessons from our mother in creating space around myself. I learned to read the knots in her forehead while the guys went out for oysters. And I never meant to replicate her, but spend enough time sitting across from someone and you pick up their habits. That's why women in my family have been shrinking for decades. We all learned it from each other, the way each generation taught the next how to knit, weaving silence in between the threads, which I can still feel as I walk through this ever-growing house. Skin itching, picking up all the habits my mother has unwittingly dropped, like bits of crumpled paper from her pocket on her countless trips, from bedroom to kitchen to bedroom again. Nights I hear her creep down to eat plain yogurt in the dark, a fugitive stealing calories to which she does not feel entitled. Deciding how many bites is too many, how much space she deserves to occupy. Watching the struggle, I either mimic or hate her, and I don't want to do either anymore, but the burden of this house has followed me across the country. I asked 5 questions in genetics class today, and all of them started with the word sorry. I don't know the capstone requirements. I don't know the capstone requirements for the sociology major because I spent the whole meeting deciding whether or not I could have another piece of pizza. A circular obsession I never wanted, but inheritance is accidental. Still staring at me with wine-soaked lips from across the kitchen table.
It's on us to stop sexual assault.
To get in the way before it happens.
To get a friend home safe.
And to not blame the victim.
It's on us.
To look out for each other.
To
not look the other way.
It's on us to stand up.
To step in.
To take responsibility.
It's on us, all of us,
to stop sexual assault.
Learn how and take the pledge at itsonus.org.
He's not running for president, but he will shake hands and kiss babies. It's the Bill Press Show, your progressive headquarters for the 2016 election.
33 minutes after the hour. Here we are. It is the Bill Press Show. We are coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. And talking about, of course, most of the attention today on the results last night from New Hampshire. Stunning in both parties, with a blowout on the Republican side as Donald Trump, John Kasich coming in second place, and a blowout on the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders with 21 points over, by the last numbers that I saw, over Hillary Clinton, 61 to 39. At 34 minutes after the hour, we jump back up to New Hampshire and Radio Row to talk to the Democratic state chair. You know, I was former Democratic state chair of California, so I'm always honored to meet a fellow state chair Ray Buckley, Democratic State Chair of New Hampshire. Mr. Chairman, good morning.
Good morning, Bill.
How did I don't know where to start about. Were you surprised by the margin of victory of Bernie Sanders last night?
Well, it is certainly a margin that in modern times we haven't seen. And so I think that most observers were expecting it to tighten up. It was pretty clear that Bernie has had a lead in the polls now for probably 4 to 5 months. So it was expected that he was going to be successful, but certainly the margin was larger than what traditionally you would have seen in the New Hampshire primary.
Now, the spin, of course, that we've already heard from the Clinton campaign is that, well, of course Bernie won New Hampshire because he's from Vermont, which is right next door. New Hampshire well. Is that a fair criticism, or is there more to it than that?
Well, certainly it has a factor. I don't believe that it's probably as high enough to have created such a margin, but we are very familiar with Bernie. We certainly know him from time he was mayor and in Congress and the Senate. He's always been coming over here. We share media markets along the Connecticut River, which separates our two small states. Physically, we're probably about the size of, one county in California.
Well, some of the counties in California, for sure, are probably that big. Now, in terms of the way the primary works in New Hampshire, right?
Yes.
Undeclared voters make up, about half of the electorate?
43%.
43%.
And we have same-day voter registration, and from what I hear, tens of thousands of people registered yesterday who had previously been unregistered. The big difference also, comparing 2008 and 2012, is that the colleges and universities were in session because of the whole primary scheduling challenges. The primary in 2008 and 2012 was bumped right up onto the holidays when the colleges and universities were out on winter break.
Wow. So that was certainly an advantage for Bernie, particularly, right?
Once again, couldn't make a 21-point difference.
Yeah.
But added in, it certainly gave him, an advantage. And from reports, the towns, the university towns, and college towns came out massively for Senator Sanders.
All right. So if we have 43% of the electorate, voting population are undeclared, people can register on the very same day. And then when the undeclareds walk in to the polling place, as we saw last night, they can vote in either party, correct?
Absolutely, and they often change their mind which party ballot they're going to take and which candidate they're going to support while they're standing in line. It's the huge percentage of both the likely Democratic primary voters and the likely Republican primary voters going into yesterday was somewhere between 30 to 40%. So I'm sure once we see more information from what happened yesterday, you're going to see a lot of people that decided at the last minute for both Bernie and for Trump.
So in other words, let's say I'm a Democrat. I mean, I've kind of vote Democratic, but I'm a declared undeclared, right? And if I think, the Republican Party's a little more interesting today, right? Because they've got all this battle for which one's going to get third place or which one's going to get fourth place. I think this year I'll vote as a Republican. I could do that, right? I could cause mischief in the Republican primary.
Yeah, for years people have talked about that, and other than individual isolated incidents, there's never been an actual movement that way.
Yeah. Well, I know nearby there is Bob Mulholland, who used to work with me in California as one of the smartest political operatives in the country. He's the kind of guy who could start a movement like that, Mr. Chairman, if you want to get one started. Maybe the next time around. Not this time. So how do you believe that that Bernie will be able to, do you think he'll be able to take his message, which was so successful in New Hampshire, and take that around the country and be successful in other states?
Well, I think that Iowa and New Hampshire, and we're looking forward to our sister states of Nevada and South Carolina, did exactly what we have always said that we would do, and that's really give folks a shake. Give them the opportunity to state their case, and so now Senator Sanders and his campaign has that opportunity on the national stage to make their case. Now, whether or not he is successful in that in the other states and territories as we go on for the coming months, that's up to him. But certainly the campaign that his staff put together and he put together here in New Hampshire certainly should be congratulated.
The Clinton campaign, to a large extent, were counting on the fact that this was the comeback state for the comeback kid for Bill Clinton, right, in 1992, even though he didn't win, but he came a strong second, I believe. And, of course, this was the state where Hillary Clinton, after losing in Iowa to Barack Obama, came back at the very last minute and won New Hampshire in 2008, and that propelled her back into the Democratic primary. So they were counting on New Hampshire, a state that's been good to them in the past, for being good to them this time. What happened?
Well, I think that Hillary received roughly the same percentage of votes that she received in 2008, and Bernie was able to galvanize all of the other supporters that were out there for the other candidates. So it was a challenge. That's a great thing about Iowa and New Hampshire and our other early sister states. The campaigns can retool, look at their messages, and really become a lot stronger and better. And that certainly happened to a number of candidates over the years. And so I'm fascinated. They're going to have a debate tomorrow evening coming out of Wisconsin, and we've got a number of them coming up in the coming months, and I'm looking forward to those as well.
Yeah, one big difference this year is that there were just two candidates and not three, right?
Well, very similar to 2000 with Al Gore and Bill Bradley, and interesting, this sort of result could have happened to Bill Bradley with Bernie Sanders in 2000 if John McCain had not attracted such an overwhelming number of the independents to vote in the Republican primary and swamp George W. Bush. So if history could have, been very similar just 16 years ago.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure this has been a very busy time for you, a very exciting time for you, and now you've sure got some unpacking to do, and then just relax and chill for this weekend, I hope. Right?
We've got one of the top U.S. Senate races with Governor Maggie Hassan taking on first-term Senator Kelly Ayotte.
Yes.
So we are going to immediately pivot to that Senate race. Presidential elections are usually pretty good for Democrats here in New Hampshire. Right. We've been sweeping the entire ticket for the last couple election cycles, anyways, and we think that we can make sure that we have a Senate majority by taking that Senate seat and making sure that Jeanne Shaheen's vote is not crossed out.
How's it looking? How's the early polling looking?
The polls are tied, but Governor Hassan has a higher popularity than Kelly Ayotte, and I think that once the people start focusing on what Kelly Ayotte's been doing for the last 5 years in the U.S. Senate, this is one of the strongest pro-choice states in the nation. She's 100% anti-choice. In fact, I read a story of all of the female Republican U.S. senators, no one is more anti-choice than Kelly Ayotte. She's anti-LGBT. We have nearing 75% approval for marriage equality here in the state, and Governor Hassan, as the state Senate Majority Leader, was instrumental in passing that 6 years ago. Environmental issues, her coziness with the Koch brothers and other Wall Street billionaires. It is going to be a very, very interesting race, and I think ultimately very successful.
Yeah, one of the most important Senate races in the country for sure, and it would be a great public service for the entire nation.
The world.
If you could retire, the world, right? If you could retire Kelly Ayotte and give her a ticket back home to New Hampshire permanently, one-way ticket back home. Mr. Chairman, Ray Buckley, great to talk to you again. Thank you so much, and thanks for your time. And again, congratulations for putting on a good show for all the rest of us.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks. Chairman Ray Buckley of the Democratic Party of New Hampshire on our Newsline. We'll come back wrap things up here this Wednesday morning.
Your progressive headquarters for the 2016 election. This is The Bill Press Show.
On opening body bags after Typhoon Haiyan. I can only imagine it like unearthing a scab. Zipper breaks open one by one. Mothers trying to dig through themselves an umbilical cord to lend life to a limp ghost. There is not enough relief here to hide the scent of what this child used to be. The coconut trees are not high enough to see over the inside out that was made here. Bags do not have the honor of being called burial plots. Churches ain't supposed to be mausoleums. Tacloban was morphed into ground zero. And I watch this while it snows in Madison, Wisconsin, a place where it's easier to live as a rodent than it is to be a colored person. This place drowns my people in a different way. I inhabit both places like Jigsaw corpse trying to find itself whole. These brown boys in Tacloban aren't my cousins, but I want to carry them to safety. These brown girls in Tacloban aren't my daughters, but I want to tell them they're still growing after this choking, but I'm still an ocean away, a language farther from root, a skin tone lighter than the sand, born there, raised here, home nowhere. To watch this storm is a sorry excuse for mourning. It is to need the sun desperately. It is to realize that your body is in one country while your grief is in another. To look at your house, walk to a river, and come back to no house is to be Filipino. To look at your motherland hurting from a TV screen is to be Filipino American. To watch my islands through the blue eyes of Anderson Cooper is the most American I have ever felt, but I still cry for them, and I still pray for them because God tried to make them Atlantis before they were ready to be a myth just yet, because rebuilding is the Filipinos' most intrinsic muscle memory, but most painful trauma, because relief is just a word whose Tagalog translation I don't even know, because this poem is all I can give for my country, bleeding in salt water. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord keeps trying to drown us. Hallowed be thy bodies. Thy kingdom come down in waves and winds on earth as it is destroyed. Take us this day our daily rations and forgive those who have tried to kill us as we forgive those who have tried to kill us. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us whose skin has always meant sin now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Yeah, by the way, one of the interesting, we talked a lot about the exit polls last night, and I was provided we were provided at CNN the Republican and the Democratic exit polls. One of the most interesting I found was Democrats coming in were asked, okay, moving forward, are you looking for a candidate who will continue the policies of President Obama, or would adopt more liberal policies than President Obama? 40% said continue, 42% said more liberal.
That is fascinating.
Right?
I really do think that's fascinating.
Now, that speaks well for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Right? And if you will permit,
someone should write about this.
That's the point that I make in my new book, which Bernie Sanders says, read this book, right? That's his blurb on the back of the book called Buyer's Remorse, How Obama Let Progressives Down. Just the fact that as good a president as he has been, and we're all proud of him, and we're all happy we voted for him and that we elected him, and he did a lot of good things, that in some areas he really did let progressives down. And progressives, Democrats in general, say, I wish we've done a lot of good stuff. I wish we had done more, right? And that's the premise of the book. Again, Buyer's Remorse. It's in the bookstores now. Just came out. Get it on Amazon.com. Once your signed copy, let us know. Just go to BillPressShow.com. Let us know how you want it signed. We'll get it out to you right away. And last night, it was a big night, and no doubt about it. The networks called it. As soon as the polls closed, they called Donald Trump on the Republican side, Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side. He was ahead in the polls all the way along after Iowa, and Hillary with that little barely winning Iowa. But they sold it as a great big huge victory in Iowa and said, now we're going to go on in New Hampshire. This is what they were telling reporters. And we're going to get Bernie down to less than 10%. And then we'll make the case he only got that little bit. He beat us, but only by that little margin. And the only reason he beat us is because he's from next door in Vermont. That whole spin fell apart, with Bernie racking up a 22-point lead, 61 to 39%. Bernie Sanders came out. The speeches came pretty early last night, too. And Bernie says, we send a message that'll be heard around the world.
Together, we have sent the message that will echo from Wall Street to Washington, from Maine to California.
There for a second, I thought he was going to break into that.
This land is your land.
Yeah.
This land is my land. From California.
It sounded like it. By the way, did you see Bernie that before he gave his concession speech, he was out with his son and his grandsons and they were shooting hoops?
Bernie got buckets.
Bernie was getting buckets, every one.
Like 5 in a row. Amazing.
I don't want to make a comparison and compare Bernie Sanders to Barack Obama, but when the cameras are on Barack Obama, we've seen him miss several shots. Bernie Sanders was nailing them, man.
I know.
One right after another.
No, I couldn't believe it. Hillary Clinton, she gave a very generous, a very gracious, I should say, concession speech as well, with husband Bill and daughter Chelsea by her side. Hillary Clinton congratulating the senator from Vermont.
I want to begin by congratulating Senator Sanders on his victory tonight. And I want to thank each and every one of you. And I want to say I still love New Hampshire, and I always will.
And New Hampshire has been very good to the Clintons, very good to Bill Clinton in 1992, very good to Hillary Clinton, of course, in 2008. Not so good to the Clintons last night. It was a big night, and now for Democrats, it's a little weird. The Democrats go on to Nevada caucus, and then to South Carolina primary. Republicans go on to South Carolina primary, and then Nevada caucus. No wonder it's so hard to follow this stuff. We'll be right back here. Wrap it up on the Bill Press Show.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
On opening body bags after Typhoon Haiyan. I can only imagine it like unearthing a scab. Zipper breaks open one by one. Mothers trying to dig through themselves an umbilical cord to lend life to a limp ghost. There is not enough relief here to hide the scent of what this child used to be. The coconut trees are not high enough to see over the inside out that was made here. Bags do not have the honor of being called burial plots. Churches ain't supposed to be mausoleums. Tacloban was morphed into ground zero. And I watch this while it snows in Madison, Wisconsin, a place where it's easier to live as a rodent than it is to be a colored person. This place drowns my people in a different way. I inhabit both places like Jigsaw Corpse, trying to find itself whole. These brown boys in Tacloban aren't my cousins, but I want to carry them to safety. These brown girls in Tacloban aren't my daughter. Nowhere to watch this storm is a sorry excuse for mourning. It is to need the sun desperately. It is to realize that your body is in one country while your grief is in another. To look at your house, walk to a river, and come back to no house is to be Filipino. To look at your motherland hurting from a TV screen is to be Filipino American. To watch my islands through the blue eyes of Anderson Cooper is the most American I have ever felt. But I still cry for them. And I still pray for them because God tried to make them Atlantis before they were ready to be a myth just yet, because rebuilding is the Filipinos' most intrinsic muscle memory, but most painful trauma, because relief is just a word whose Tagalog translation I don't even know, because this poem is all I can give for my country, bleeding in salt water. Hail Mary, full of grace. The Lord keeps trying to drown us. Hallowed be thy bodies. Thy kingdom come down in waves and winds on earth as it is destroyed. Take us this day our daily rations and forgive those who have tried to kill us as we forgive those who have tried to kill us. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us whose skin has always meant sin now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
This is the Bill Press Show.
And that kind of wraps it up for post coverage of the New Hampshire primary. And if you hadn't had enough politics for this week, you will be pleased to know there is a Democratic debate tomorrow night from Wisconsin.
Oh, Jesus.
Which will be it's a PBS debate, which will be simulcast on CNN. So I'll be there in New York after the debate to comment about it. All right, until 2 a.m., I hope not. And then on Saturday, there's a Republican debate in South Carolina. I'm telling you, every time you turn around, we have a debate on each side every single week. You know what Bernie would say? Enough is enough. And that's enough for today's show, too. Come back and see us again tomorrow.
This
we'll be looking
is
for
the
you.
Bill Press Show.